educate people and to help the community with their pets. We are considered a no-kill shelter. We like to describe ourselves as a compassionately, socially conscious shelter, which means we will seek euthanization for an animal that's so ill or injured that it's suffering, that's in pain, and we do see animals like that occasionally. We would also euthanize an animal that might provide such amazing danger to the community that there's no other recourse. For all intents and purposes, we are no kill. And we want to stay that way, so we need the support of our community to help us do that because, folks, we have dogs. We have dogs. I'm afraid I'm going to have to start hanging them from the ceiling pretty soon. But let me give you a little bit more information about where we're from. I was talking to somebody behind me there that remembers the old building. We actually got started in 1982 by some compassionate people that lived in this area and wanted to start the Humane Society for the Homeless Pets. And so they did. And then in 1986, ground was broken for the first building. Expansion was needed, and by March 2010, we have the 2 buildings now on the property there that is owned by the city of Cottonwood. And it's up on Mingus Avenue, 1520 West Mingus Avenue. It's just past all of your city buildings up there, the transfer station and the other things that are up there. So a little bit off the beaten path, but do come to visit us sometime. We housed over 1,300 animals in our last fiscal year. At any given time, we have 100 or more. We have 100 kennels, and they're just always full now. Some of the services that we do provide, and I feel like they're just exceptional. So we bring the animals in. They always get an initial exam. They're going to always get all of the age-appropriate vaccinations, spay and neuter once they're old enough. They're going to get deworming and anything of that nature if that's needed. They're going to get microchipped. Then there's this wonderful cadre of volunteers and staff that train the animals. So we're training them their basic commands. We're training the puppies and taking the puppies through obedience training. And we're training the older dogs, especially dogs that might come in that had been injured or mistreated. We're going to train them how to accept people and socialize them. Dogs get walked, cats get socialized. Some wonderful volunteers and donors not too long ago built a catio for us. And so the animals are very well treated. Certainly we're a shelter that all of you can be very proud of. For the people that we serve, we offer the impound services for the city of Cottonwood, so we work with your animal control people. This includes quarantined animals. So if an animal bites somebody or gets into some kind of a really deadly ruckus with another animal, we're going to bring those animals in. They'll be quarantined at our location until time passes. Usually the quarantine, or really always the quarantine for the most part, is because of rabies possibility, if the animal wasn't rabies vaccinated. We also promote lost animals on social media. We offer, of course, the healthy spayed and neutered animals up for adoption. We have animal welfare and awareness educational opportunities. We offer licensing. We offer the microchipping. And we also both research and then write and then administer grants for community spay and neuter. So I write grants for the shelters animals, but I also write grants to help community members get their animals spayed and neutered as well. And of course, we're open 7 days a week. So we're always there for the community. We're open 11 to 4. And now some of the challenges we're facing. As I had mentioned, we've got this adoption bust going on. During COVID, there was a real boom. People were adopting. They were home. Getting an animal seemed like a good idea. They were home with their animal. Up to 78% of current pet owners, this is nationwide, got their pets during COVID. 78% of people got animals during COVID. this is just of pet owners. It's unbelievable. The statistics are unbelievable. 1 in 5 households acquired a cat or dog during COVID. 1 in 5. That's just an enormous amount of people. So they were adopting. Adoptions were coming in hand over fist. Now, as the Mesa Independent had an article, they said, with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, dog shelters and rescues experienced mass adoptions as people were stuck at home and needed companions. As people returned to work or started to struggle financially, the rate of returned and abandoned dogs skyrocketed. So that's what we're seeing, and the local numbers really tell the story. We had dog adoptions in 2020 that were 116% higher than in 2019. And then throughout the 2 primary pandemic years of 2020 and 2021, there was a total of 133 increase from the previous year. So these are the adoptions, people coming in, adopting dogs. And we rely on the adoption fees because clearly the services, spay and neuter and things of that nature, cost money for us. So the adoption fees really help, and it's a win-win. The animals are getting a good home, and hopefully people that want a pet are getting a pet. So it just soared during the pandemic years. Now we're in the bust. We're seeing dog adoptions a 56% decrease, and overall animals have decreased 64% in 2022. So again, we're full of dogs especially. It can fluctuate between cats and dogs, but as some of you may know in your own community, cats can live outside somewhat. So a lot of the abandoned cats end up learning how to live outdoors, and you may see them in your neighborhood as community cats. Sometimes those are brought in as strays. They're trapped and brought in, and we'll take care of those too. Dogs, on the other hand, don't fare as well. They're going to get hit by a car. They're going to cause a ruckus. They're going to be hanging around. And we just have so many dogs now. They're always at capacity. They're usually the larger dogs. Smaller dogs, people will be more prone to adopt, or puppies. But those big dogs are very difficult, and so they end up staying at the shelter. We have some that have been there for over a year. And we're doing what we can, of course, to mitigate that and find good homes for these animals. You may be asking, what can you do to help? Well, the very obvious is if you're looking for a pet, adopt from us. Check us out on our website. You can see the animals there. Or if you hear about a family member, a friend, a neighbor that wants a dog or a cat, sometimes we even have guinea pigs or other interesting animals, send them our way or have them again. Check out the website to see what's available. We always can use donations, and as you can imagine, with that many animals every day, things are soiled. Blankets are soiled. Towels are soiled, so we're always doing laundry. So we need laundry soap. We need liquid dish soap. And please, more than anything, I think, just be an ambassador for us. Like us on Facebook. Again, tell your friends, share posts, promote the adoptable animals so that we can get them into some good homes. You can become a volunteer or even a foster home. Foster homes are nice, but there's a lot of foster fails out there, which means you foster home an animal and you adopt it. And I'm one of those just recently, over the last couple of months. And of course, you can always donate financially. That goes without saying. Besides the adoption boom and bust, we also lost trust and a couple of major donors. So we had some internal situations that occurred as well as the external challenges. And those entities put approximately $8,000 a month into the monthly revenue. We have that no longer. So we're really looking at ways to increase our revenue so that we can continue to do what we do, and to increase awareness in the public eye of the animals that need your assistance. We see a lot of really uplifting things. We have a lot of great support, and then we also see some real tragedies as well. So it can be a real roller coaster at the shelter on any given day. And I know that you see that in your walks of life. Wasn't too long ago that there was a couple sitting on the floor. They were saying goodbye to their cat and their dog because they were having to move out of the area. And because they couldn't find a place to rent, they couldn't find a place, they couldn't find jobs. So they were moving back east, but they couldn't take their pets. And the man was just literally bawling his eyes out. So we found good homes for their pets eventually. And the upside to that is that a family adopted the dog first and then came back and got the cats. So the two pets got to be adopted to the same home. So we do see both sides. But we thank you again for your support. The City of Cottonwood supports us greatly in many different ways. And again, it's just much appreciated. Thank you for letting me be here this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Redel. Appreciate the presentation. All right. Okay, so next is call to the public. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda for discussion and/or action. And we have a few items on the agenda this evening that I know are time sensitive. I'd like to move those items up. These are all the calls to the public that I've received for an event which is not on the agenda, which is the Pride event coming up. So I'm going to ask all of you to be patient. We're going to work through our agenda very quickly and efficiently and get these folks out of the room as quick as possible. And then we'll open it up to the call to the public regarding the Pride event. Each one of these forms that's been filled out is to do with the Pride event. And just so you all know, it's not on the agenda, so we can't discuss it with you. It'll be the same as what occurred at our last regular meeting. So you're more than welcome to stick around and speak to us for your 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. But that Pride event's not on the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and move on then to approval of the minutes of the City Council retreat of January 26, 2023, the special meeting of February 13th, 2023, and regular meeting of February 7th, 2023. And I will motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Karat seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Minutes are approved. And we go into the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the agenda, the consent agenda, considering its normal sequence. We have 7 items this evening under consent agenda. First up is a request for limited waiver of Riverfront Park camping restriction for the nights of March 24th and 25th, 2023 for the Verde Valley Rally mountain bike event to be held on March 25th, 2023. Second item is cooperative use contract with Cactus Asphalt, Inc. for the city's fiscal year 2023 pavement preservation project. Third is resolution number 3162, appointing George Gaylor to the city's Planning and Zoning Commission. 4 is change order to job order contract with Schofield Civil Construction for the installation of encased piping under the Cottonwood ditch for the new wastewater lift station number 2. Item 5, extension of the agreement with Yavapai Community College for reclaimed water. Item 6, limited appointment of Anna Kramer as an associate magistrate of the Cottonwood Municipal Court. And item 7 is a new liquor license application, 010 beer and wine storage for Jose Pineda, applicant for Verde Lee Grill and Deli located at 516th North Main Street. Is there an item that a council member or citizen would like to have pulled? All right, I'll motion then to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's approved. Let's ask our deputy clerk to read resolution number 3162 by title only, please.
Resolution number 3162, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, appointing George Gaylor, a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and establishing his term of office.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations, Mr. Gaylor, if you're out there. I appreciate your service on this commission. Okay, new business. Following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. First up, resolution number 3155, approving a minor amendment to the city's general plan, changing the land use designation for approximately 11.6 acres of land located on the west side of Silverado Drive, south of Rodeo Drive, 1432 South Silverado Drive, Yavapai County, Assessor's Parcel Number 406-12-042E, from GC General Commercial to PLD Plan Development. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Gary Davis with Community Development with the City of Cottonwood. My presentation will cover the general plan amendment that you just talked about, also the next item, which is the zone change. So tonight, February 21st, will be a public hearing on the resolution for the general plan amendment, as well as the second reading and public hearing for the zone change. We had a first public hearing last time on February 7th. So with this arrangement, votes can be taken on both items tonight by the council. Running through a few items on the project. Land is approximately 11.6 acres in size. General plan land use map change is from general commercial to planned development is the proposed general plan land use designation. The zone change item would be from C2 heavy commercial to PAD planned area development. PAD zone is always specific to a master development plan. In other words, any changes that would be made on an approved master development plan, if they're significant changes, would have to go back to the process. So the zoning is very specific to that master development plan. In 2005, there was a zone change from the original county R1L 35, I believe, to C2. This property was annexed in 2002, and in 2005, this zone change was proposed. It was approved, but with 24 stipulations, including a height limit at 3,386 feet above sea level for any buildings, any structures. Also, there were some use restrictions on that. They were proposing no outdoor auto repair, kennels, drive-in theaters. Some of the C2 uses that would normally be allowed wouldn't be allowed, and these stipulations are still in place today on this zoning. This PAD rezone would replace the C2 and the current stipulations. General plan amendment, as proposed, is the crosshatched area. The site is currently general commercial designation for future uses. That's proposed to go to PLD, which is planned development. To the north, the PSP is the public and semi-public uses. That happens to be Mingus Union High School, and the general commercial uses to the east. To the south and west of the dotted line there, you see the City of Cottonwood boundary and unincorporated. There's a single-family subdivision to the west in the county area. Looking at the proposed zone change, again, the proposed zone change would go from C2 to PAD, planned area development. This has an aerial photograph superimposed on it, so you can see the Mingus Union High School property directly to the north. The Walmart is the large white building to the east, and to the south and west is the single-family neighborhood in the county. That's zoned single-family, and there are a number of properties along the west and south, built houses that are accessed by cul-de-sac streets, Gray Bar Drive, and the end of Destry Lane. Project details, the proposal is for 152 multifamily units, which comes out to a density of about 13.1 units per acre. It's proposed in a configuration of 38 two-story, 25-foot high buildings, and they would have 4 townhome-style two-story apartments in each. And it would be a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, most likely more 2-bedroom than any other. Also proposed is a clubhouse and maintenance building. The applicant has calculated that about 42% of the property would be open space, 30% is required under the PAD development zone. 297 parking spaces are proposed, and that meets the city's standards for parking spaces. The applicant's traffic study shows an estimate of about 1,000 daily trips. That translates to about 70 morning peak hour trips. So in that 1 hour, there would be about 17 in to the units and 53 out. In the afternoon peak, it would be 54 in and 32 out. It's anticipated that most of that traffic would use the Rodeo Drive access, which accesses 260 at the traffic signal. There is water and sewer available at the site. This would be an infill project, so that's one of the features of an infill project is that the utilities are usually already there. And it is on a transit route. There's a transit route that runs around Walmart, and there is a transit stop a few hundred feet to the east near the Walmart entrance. This is the site plan. There are 2 proposed driveway accesses onto Silverado Drive, one at the Rodeo Drive intersection and one farther south. There's a network of pedestrian accesses as well to get from the units down to the street. Applicant is required by one of our proposed stipulations to put in a crosswalk as well as a new sidewalk in between the 2 driveway entrances to the property. And also the applicant, under one of our stipulations, is required to dedicate a path easement, a trail easement, to go to the north. We anticipate that there may someday be a trail along the south side of the Mingus Union property. This would be the last piece of private property that would connect Rodeo Drive to Camino Real and points to the west. Also proposed, the developer added a above-ground detention area of about 11,800 cubic feet, and that is located near Silverado Drive. That would be in addition to the 3 underground structures that are proposed, and those are in place to meet city requirements that the amount of water leaving the site during a storm event, a 100-year storm event, would not exceed the amount pre-development. In other words, after development, no more water leaves the site than pre-development, thanks to detention areas. Any water that does leave the site would go towards the north, which would be the Cherry Hills Wash, which crosses the site and is undergrounded in a culvert structure with the blue area you see there. And that wash starts farther to the west in the National Forest, goes through the developed county areas, enters the city at about this property, and then continues east along Rodeo Drive under 260 and ends at the Cottonwood ditch. There's another wash to the south of this that does not take any water from this property. That's the Rio Mesa wash that similarly follows Rio Mesa Trail Road and crosses 260 and also ends at the Cottonwood ditch, and that would not receive any water from this project. General plan, looking at the policies that would be applicable to this project. In the Chapter 3 land use element, the introduction encourages infill development strategies, noting that compact development can reduce the amount of infrastructure needed to support growth and allow residents to walk and bike to nearby facilities and services. Again, this project already has roads to it. It already has water and sewer utilities available at the site. Under key issues, again, encouraging compact development patterns, providing opportunities for walkable mixed-use neighborhoods. Area 9, commercial core, and this area would be in the commercial core. That would include down through 260. Consider additional multi-unit residential opportunities in nearby areas set back from highway frontage and provide improved pedestrian links between commercial and residential uses. This property is C2, but it's set back almost a quarter a mile away from Highway 260. Objective 3.1b, again, encouraging mixed-use development with focused compact centers comprised of residential, retail, office, entertainment, and residential uses in order to promote walkable neighborhoods. Also supporting development that provides for a variety of residential types and styles, and also to protect existing neighborhoods from incompatible land uses. And the incompatibility, this project is proposed to be multifamily, arguably less incompatible than a commercial, heavy commercial use that could be built under C2. However, there are some effects. This is the site plan back in 2005 that the council inquired about last time. It was referred to in one of the stipulations from the 2005 rezone, which referred to a buffer area. This plan shows a buffer area of about 68 to 70 feet on the west and a little bit more than that on the south. And another site plan done at the same time shows the landscaping proposed in the buffer yard, again, that width of about 70 feet along the west side. This is an exhibit that was given to us by the applicant to show the height limitations that are imposed by that 3,386-foot elevation stipulation from the original 2005 rezone. This red line is actually the 3386 contour, so obviously areas above that under the current grade of this property could not be developed. The areas in green are the only areas that could be built to a height where building could be built to a height of 25 feet. The yellow area shows places under, again, the current grading situation where buildings could be built between 18 feet and up to 25 feet. And the red area is areas where no development could be built over 18 feet in height without moving some dirt. Again, this is the cross-section we showed last time, showing the elevations of the proposed apartment structures on the right and the existing homes in the white on the left. The elevations are shown on the margins, but this red line represents that 3,386 contour level. Obviously, what's proposed would not be within that, but again, as I said, under this proposed PAD, if PAD rezone is affected, then the old 2005 C2 zoning and its stipulations would be replaced. They would go away. So that would be under today's situation with the C2 zone. The height limitation is that red line, and with that buffer yard that was shown on the previous plan, these yellow areas would be the box in which a development could be built under the current zoning. And of course, this is the rendering that was presented by the applicant to show views from the backyards of the properties to the west on Gray Bar. Stipulations, these were read into the record at the first reading 2 weeks ago. These are the same stipulations. Number 9 was added by the Planning and Zoning Commission before they took a vote on it. Their vote was did not recommend approval. A vote to approve, motion to approve failed 2-4 at the Planning and Zoning Commission on November 28th. The additional stipulation number 10 is one that council added in response to the applicant's offer to place that additional 11,800 cubic feet detention area above ground. That concludes staff's presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions on the process. The applicant is here to answer questions about the project itself.
Okay, council, do we have any questions right now for Mr. Davis? Okay. All right. I know that the applicant is here. Would you care to present? Ms. Lee, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Charity Lee. I'm with Miramonte Homes. And I'd like to go back to the exhibit. And I'd like to kind of discuss this a little bit more, if you have a few minutes, please. Last 2 weeks ago, this question came up about the restrictions on the site and how the existing ordinance actually impacted the site. So we worked with our engineer to prepare this exhibit. And as you know, it's over 18 years ago, the site was rezoned to C2 commercial through Ordinance 463. A stipulation was placed on the property through the ordinance that no building, parapet, wall, roof, or mechanical equipment, street light, or other structure exceed the height of 3,386 feet above sea level. This plan here depicts the impacts of Ordinance 463 on the existing site and the natural topographic lines on the 11.56 acre site without grading. The red area shows the unbuildable area. This is 8.6 acres, or 75% of the entire site. Not even a single level building up to 18 feet tall could be built in this area. The yellow area is 1.5 acres, or 13.2% of the site. Single level buildings 18 foot tall would be able to be built in this area. The green area is 1.2 acres, or 10.2% of the site. Buildings 25 foot tall could be built in this area. With the height restrictions placed on the site through Ordinance 463, only 2.7 acres out of 11.6 acres is buildable. 75% of the site is unbuildable. This ordinance, in effect, created an unbuildable site, which is likely the reason it's remained vacant since the rezoning over 18 years ago. Council, we have done everything possible to address the concerns of the community and still deliver a viable project. We lowered the buildings approximately 6 feet along the west line and are cutting the site down 20 foot in places. We also included a secondary ingress-egress and added over 21% of additional stormwater detention. All of these changes and additions are at a substantial increase to the project, which Miramonte is willing to make. We understand the concerns of the residents along the west property line, but we are not able to reduce the buildings to a single level and make this project pencil. The Verde Valley is in a housing crisis. Last year, in a meeting with the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission, the concerns over the height of the project, these were discussed. The minutes from that meeting state, city council members also agreed on the need for workforce housing is dire. It was also stated that they, the city council, agreed that there is going to be development there no matter what. And this would be a much better view and use. Miramonte agrees with these statements and has done everything it possibly can to make this project feasible, as was agreed with the city on March 8th of 2022. Council, it comes down to economics. The more housing units you have, the lower the rents. It's all about supply and demand. Our superintendent for Mesquite Hills has to drive 3 hours per day round trip to Cottonwood because he was unable to find a place to rent. As council members, you have to make the hard decisions and consider the needs of the entire community, not just a handful of property owners. We heard at the last meeting the business owners, they can't hire employees because they can't find housing. We are ready to bring 150 units to Cottonwood and would be ready to start construction as early as this coming fall. Please do what's right for Cottonwood and the Verde Valley by approving the rezoning and the general plan amendment to allow this project to proceed. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council for Ms. Lee?
I don't know if the question is appropriate for the applicant or maybe I should have asked it for staff because I was looking for that in our packet. Was this provided?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Henry, no, this was a late addition of this particular graphic. The other graphics, the two site plans from 2005, were in your packet.
Right, so I was just trying to compare because in the packet it says 6 acres of usable versus this, which says the 8.6 acres of unbuildable area. So can you explain that, please?
I'm not sure where you're referring to in the.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting now to turn the microphone off. I apologize. Just the 2005 drawings say 8.6 acres usable. So can you just explain the difference between that 2005 plan versus the one that was just up on the screen?
Yes, okay, I see what you're talking about. Yes, I believe that 8.6 acres usable refers to everything outside the buffer areas and maybe over the, it appears to be over the crosshatched area, which means 8.6 acres would be usable if graded. So in other words, that's everything outside the buffer.
If graded and if it fell below that
And the buildings on it fell below that 3386. And parapets and other things.
Did that answer your question?
It does. So the important piece I think that I missed this time was that is after grading. So what council reviewed in 2005 or was told was 8.6 acres out of the approximately 11.6 acre parcel could be used, but with grading. And now in the image that we just had, it's the 8.6 are unusable because the developer is not able to or has declined to grade. Is that accurate?
Yes, this is assuming the existing grade, as I mentioned.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
But anyone building there would have to grade, correct?
Under the old ordinance, the ordinance that exists today, then yes, in order to make more of that available for grading, they would have to comply with the buffer zone, which was indicated on that map, and the top of the roof line could not be higher than the 3386.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Lee.
Council, I would like to clarify one thing I heard. We have graded in our site plan, actually with the additional secondary ingress egress, we increased our grading from around 46,000 cubic yards up to over 106,000 cubic yards. So we are prepared to grade, and as we mentioned last council member meeting, that's 10,000 truckloads of grading that we added in addition, because what we had heard at the planning and zoning meeting, the combined meeting, we heard a couple different concerns. One was secondary entrance. They wanted a secondary egress, ingress. That was concern number one. Concern number two was we needed to have additional larger parking stalls for people that have big trucks. We also addressed that. There weren't specific concerns that we had heard from council about the height restrictions on the project. That being said, through the grading, we were able to actually cut down the site between 6 foot up to 20 feet in different places.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Lee or for staff? Okay. So we're asked tonight to vote on the resolution, and that's going to inform us whether or not we move forward to vote on the ordinance. So if it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and I know we have a lot of folks here that like to speak on this item. May I go ahead and take public comment now on this resolution prior to a vote, council, is that?
Agree.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so then that's what we'll do. So folks in the audience, if you would like to speak on this item, thank you. There are yellow forms that you can find on a table over there. You're more than welcome to fill one out, and then we'll get you up here during call to the public, and you've got 3 minutes to address council. We're not able to have a conversation with you as such, but if you have specific questions, please let us know what that question is, and we'll make a note and make sure that your questions are answered, and then we'll take a vote. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and call you up one at a time, and I'll get folks queued up behind you so we move through this just as quickly as possible out of respect for everyone's time. And I'm going to have our deputy clerk chime a little beeper. You'll know it when you hear it. That's an indication that your 3 minutes is up, and we'll get the next person up behind you. So first up, Mr. Moffett, Kelly Moffett, you're up first, followed by Claire Rasmussen. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, council members, can I have a listen to see what that tone sounds like real quick? Okay, so when I hear that, I have to stop talking. All right. With all due respect, I don't think the council just heard all of the mitigating issues regarding this development. There's something that's not getting discussed again, is the fact that stormwater runoff is not being properly managed in that area already. Walmart and the 2 car dealerships are sending a lot of water into the Cottonwood ditch already. The ditch is an irrigation ditch, not intended to take stormwater runoff. It overflows several times every monsoon season now, and it's gotten progressively worse over the years. I've lived down that area between this development and the river for over 20 years, and the runoff comes immediately now. It used to be trickling out slowly, and that's probably because the Walmart design had that design into it. The mitigation there was to have runoff come out slowly over a 48-hour period. That stopped happening. Part of the problem there is that the city has no ongoing requirement for inspections. So even though some of these conditions and design features may have been approved at the time of original construction, they don't get maintained, and there's no requirement that they would be maintained. I've talked to engineers at Walmart back in Arkansas several times, tried to explain to them that, hey, what used to work, back when Tim Costello first explained it to me when he was a city engineer, it worked okay, but it stopped working within a fairly short time. And so now every time it rains in the summer, every time we get just a marginal monsoon rain, we're getting water just charging down our way in high velocity. And so the velocity is an issue that has not been resolved. That small detention basin that they put in here on the project, that's not going to make much difference. It's just too small. There's any additional water at all added to the water that's already exceeding the Cottonwood ditch's ability to carry it. It's just going to be that much more water that's going to be hitting our area down below there, and we're going to be getting this, not just water. It's changed over time, and it's bringing with it a lot of debris, a lot of pollutants, and since there's so much paved surface with vehicles, a lot of those are petroleum-based pollutants, which are harmful to the Verde River. And so, and not to mention our own properties, which we grow fruit, we sell fruit. And I'm getting dead patches in the grass now from water, but it's carrying with it. I don't think there's been any analysis done to say what's in this water, but it smells bad. I mean, just right away. It's not like it rots over time. It smells bad right away anymore. So something's in it that shouldn't be there, and we're seeing the impact from it down below. And I would ask the council to consider the vote taken by the P&Z Commission. They sided with the sympathetic opinions raised and the descriptions given by us. So please take that into consideration tonight before you vote.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Claire Rasmussen, you are up next, and you'll be followed by Cheryl Fredenberg. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for listening. I'm on 1445 South Gray Bar Drive, so I'm one of the perimeter properties to this development. And as you've already heard, it was originally zoned for single-family residential, and then Larry Green bought the property and was going to change the zoning to heavy commercial. And so we all came up with a compromise. As you can imagine, we were upset about it, and so the surrounding property owners sat down with Larry Green and with the city and came up with that compromise, which was codified in Ordinance 463. I don't think that any one of us ever thought that there could be some lawyer that hatched up a scheme to get the city out of its promise by merely renaming this with a different name. If we thought of that at the time, we probably would have made that part of the ordinance. And when I was younger, I grew up on a farm. My dad taught me that when you make a promise, you keep it. And this is just if you change the zoning, you're just getting out of the city's promise to us property owners. Now, I know that you weren't the mayor at the time, and none of you were on the council, but it was a promise by the city of Cottonwood, and it was given to us property owners, and the intention was to preserve our property values and also to preserve our views. And I don't think that it's right to change the zoning because that's getting out of the intention of the promise. So I urge you to keep it and keep the existing zoning. And there's one other point I wanted to bring up, that during the initial presentation to all of us adjacent property owners, Mr. Kemmerly said that they anticipate rents in the range of $1,700 to $2,300 a month, which means they're targeting people with incomes between $68,000 to $92,000 a year. So this isn't low-income housing. None of the people at Walmart are going to live here, and the people that work in the restaurants are not going to live here. So please don't break your promise to us by changing the zoning, especially for a project that doesn't solve city problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Cheryl Frattenberg, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Don Stockbridge.
Hi, my name's Cheryl Frattenberg. My address is 1459 Gray Bar Drive. And, well, I didn't talk to Claire, but he said about everything, some of the things I wanted to say. Because I've been here since we bought our house in 1998. Our house, each house was on like about a third of an acre. Asked about how that was going to be developed. Oh, it's going to, that's the zoning. It's going to be one house per third acre, so we bought the house. I went to the zoning meetings for the first change, and we did. It took a lot of give and take, because first we were not wanting apartments there. But once we talked and met with the city and Larry Green, and they were willing to compromise. And so then we were for it. We knew it was going to be developed. We still are in agreement with it being developed. And we're okay with apartments. It's just they need to be compatible with the neighborhood. This is not compatible. They show these lovely pictures, a lot of them topographical, but that view from Gray Bar, well, our buffer zone was 70 feet, and it is now less than 10 yards before that building gets put in there. There's not going to be a whole lot of plants and lovely things, and there's off the building. It's going to be right 10 yards away from us, less than 10 yards, 29 feet away from us. They talk about us losing our Red Rock views. I can do without the Red Rock views. I can't do with our view being a wall of apartments with windows up at the top that can look right down into our backyards. There goes our privacy. They can look right in our windows. We have no privacy. And not to mention being so close to us, the lighting that's going to happen, the noise of the development being so close to us, it is really going to adversely affect us, not only with our living, but it's, they say it's not feasible. Planning and zoning asked them if they could build one story on the apartments closest to the west side to our house. It wasn't feasible for them. Well, it's not feasible for single homeowners to bear the cost of the depreciation. It's not fair for the people on Bates and UVX who've already spent thousands every time it rains to clean up their properties. It's not feasible for them to have a more influx of water, and we can't afford more pollutants in our waterways. We've got to protect those. And we heard about the damage to our ecological system with the animals and wildlife. And Mayor Monti keeps talking about this being affordable housing. This is not affordable housing for people in the service industry. It is just not. It might be affordable for Californians that want to come over, but it's not affordable for most of our citizens. Was that my bell? Oh, okay. Let's see. You know, we just want you to, it was a promise made to us. That's how I feel like. It was a promise, and it didn't, promises shouldn't have expiration dates, especially by our city council. So please vote for us. That was it, wasn't it? Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Fredenberg. Thank you. Next, we have, Don Stockbridge, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Bill Bullock. Evening.
Mayor and City Council. My name is Dawn Stockbridge, and I live in the impacted area of the city stormwater runoff below Walmart and Larry Green. I can imagine the load you carry in your positions of leadership. It must be very difficult in the decisions you make. I know you can't make everyone happy. As a neighbor of the city, I'd like to ask the city to strive to be a good neighbor. Every time we are hit with a water runoff event, we are surrounded by neighbors who send out messages checking on each other and our properties. They show up to help us fill sandbags, protect our home with barricades, and clean up trees that have fallen. I have footage from 2016 and every summer thereafter, except 2020 as there was no rain, recording these massive events, to only see them increase in velocity and damage, which have contaminated our well water the last 2 storms, making it undrinkable for long periods of time. The amount of water is also of great concern for our children and teenage drivers' safety. When these water runoff events hit, our children know the drill: sandbag and barricade. Then when it stops, it's shovel, shovel, shovel. With weeks of damage repair and cleanup, when the mud starts to dry, we load up with trash bags and start our cleanup walk of the neighborhood, picking up the city's trash. Our children have been good neighbors by cleaning up the city's trash every summer for the last 7 years. I would like to kindly ask the city if you would consider being good neighbors to yourselves by making choices that not only protect your neighbor's property, but especially their children. Thank you.
Thank you.
I brought a weapon.
Mr. Bullock, before you start, just wanted to give a quick reminder for folks that weren't at the meeting last time. I would like you to please hold your applause while we're getting our presentations up here. I know it's an emotional evening for a lot of us, especially those that live in and around this area, but I do ask you please hold your applause. Mr. Bullock, it's yours.
Okay, the interesting thing about this project, it only benefits is Miramani. They're the only benefactor. It impacts virtually everyone around in a very negative fashion. The potential for increased downstream flooding almost takes a back seat to the negative impact on the residents to the west. Under the R1L 35 county zoning, possibly 10 to 12 houses could have been built, fitting right in with the surrounding neighborhood. Miramani is proposing 152 units and not affordable housing by their own admission. In order to approve this project, the council would have to renege on its promises made when the C2 zoning was put in place. You would have to ignore the 70-foot setback buffer requirement, the 3,386 height restriction, abandon the C2 zoning in favor of the PAD, and continue to ignore the downstream flooding issues that the city has been aware of for more than 20 years. On top of that, you would have to override the rejection of this project already handed down by the Planning and Zoning Commission. At the last council meeting, the Miramani representative basically stated that if the council does not approve this project, that they would take their toys and go home, a somewhat vain attempt to bully their way into approval. I would like to remind the council that Miramani is the new builder in the next phase of Mesquite Hills, and that they have begun the process to use these same building plans on a 19-acre site where Grosetta Ranch Road will meet Main Street, north of Kinder Heights and west of Gray Fox Ridge. A very appropriate site, I might add. So they are not going anywhere. Whether they stick around themselves to become part of the community once these projects are completed remains to be seen. Also at the last meeting, Mike Mangini spoke in favor of this project. Interestingly, he failed to mention that he is the attorney for Miramani and that the 19 acres that I just mentioned is his. Also that his brother, David's 37-year-old house on the UVX Road had floodwater inside it for the first time last summer. This is a diagram of the people to the west. This is a house. This is your 3386.
Mr. Bullock, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could try to speak in the mic so we can just pick you up. We can't hear you otherwise.
I get part of my 3 minutes back. This is your 3386. You can see that the line, a view from this house basically clears that and looks more or less horizontal. This line with the new, and this is to scale, with the new buildings, puts them on just under 40 degrees. So you can watch Big Dipper. Do we have a housing shortage? Probably. Is it being addressed? Definitely. Hundreds of apartments are currently under construction west of the hospital. Miramonte plans to build many more on the appropriate 19 acres near Gray Fox Ridge. Are those better locations? Absolutely. Are there better locations than this one available? Without a doubt. I implore the council to reject this location. It is only good for Miramonte and no one else. By the way, did any of you view the flooding video that was sent out 3 to 4 weeks ago? Thank you for that due diligence.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Lori Bullock, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Tamala Yoakum.
Good evening. Appreciate you guys and what you've been putting up with all of us here and the problems that have existed. But I would ask whether or not any of you have watched the video that was sent to you prior to the February 7th meeting of the sheet flooding that happens down to the east of the property that we are talking about. If you have not, why not? It is quite compelling. I would also like to ask what the regulations are that are in place regarding the retention and detention of the water for this project, and are there stipulations regarding the inspection of those requirements? If not, why not? We're dealing with that right now with what is there not being examined, it's not being checked, and we are paying the price for that. As you all know, our ditches and culverts fill up with silt over time and sediment from the water, and they have to be cleaned out. That's just the laws of nature that happens. So are there any inspections done to be sure that these contaminant devices are properly maintained? If not, why not? And then I'd like to ask, how are the 100-year storms determined? We've heard a lot about 100-year storms. And how is this viewed with regard to the sheet flooding that we experience? Are their determinations appropriate, or should they be re-examined? With regard to the above questions, we've owned property on Bates Road for more than 40 years. The flooding was non-existent in the early years of us owning that property. It has continually gotten worse and worse. Our next door neighbors live in a home that was built in 1948. 48. This year, they experienced their second year in a row of having sheet flooding going into their house. Never happened before that. What's changed? Other neighbors not far from us built a home in 1987, and this past year was the first year that they had water in their home. Again, what has changed? I believe that it is due to the retention, detention that is happening uphill, and it is not being inspected, and it is not being maintained. I believe that is the job of the city of Cottonwood. Final questions. Why is it not being done and enforced? Isn't it part of the job that has been deemed to you by your election to this board? It is a job that requires action on your part. And how can you consider adding to an already devastating issue without dealing with the current issues? Thank you.
Thank you. Tamala Yoakum, you're up next, and you will be followed by Ed Schill.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I'm Tamala Yoakum. I live at 1360 South Bates Road. My husband, Daryl, and I have lived there for 29 years. We've raised our children there. We have invested our lives into our property. I am not coming here tonight with solutions. I'm coming with problems. And that problem is the sheet water runoff, the stormwater runoff that comes directly west of us into our property. You as council, it is your job to take these problems and to take care of them. I attended also the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to discuss this proposed building, Silverado Lofts. Planning and Zoning voted to not recommend this going forward. At that Planning and Zoning meeting, the city engineer spoke of the design flood, which he also spoke of as the 100-year flood. Looking at the USGS site, the term 100-year flood is used in an attempt to simplify the definition of a flood that statistically has 1% chance of recurring in another year. The term 100 storm is also defined as having a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded each year. Our home has enjoyed a beautiful time of not having stormwater runoff until about 2001. Do any of you know when the last 100-year flood was that happened in the Verde Valley? From what I can tell on the internet, it was 1993. 1993 saw the Verde River with 100,000 cubic feet per second. Our home was not affected by it. And it has been. We have had water in our home now 2 times last year, and every year it has come close. Had we not been home in order to sandbag, we would have water inside our home. In your agenda, you say that you are considering a minor change tonight. This project does not affect our lives in a minor way. It does not affect the neighborhood in a minor way with the people who live there who were promised in 2005 certain stipulations. It is not a minor amendment that will add stormwater runoff to what is already existing. Our neighbors have asked you this point blankly. Have you taken the time to view the footage that was put together of our neighborhood? The footage is dramatic. There are waterfalls running through our yards, and it keeps getting worse and worse. It is not because of climate change. It is because of development and not maintaining. I am asking you tonight to do what is right for the Verde Valley and do not approve this proposed plan.
Thank you, Ms. Yo. Ed Schill, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Tim Lasota.
Mayor and council members, I'm Ed Schill, 1440 South Bates Road. I do notice that these guys do look like they're really making an effort to try to appease everything, and I applaud them for that. But the fact of the matter is, and maybe it's part of a bigger problem, but we are having a problem with water. He stated that the water goes down to the ditch. Well, where does it go from there? Yeah, it comes across all of our properties. It doesn't just go to the ditch and disappear. It overflows the ditch, it runs over the ditch, and it's got to get to the river, and we're in the way. So that's my biggest concern. And I was sitting in the back and I didn't notice, but I would like to ask if everybody did see the videos and you can see what's happening. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Schill. Tim Lasota, you're up, and then you'll be followed by Bob Woods.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Tim Lasota. I'm an attorney in Phoenix. I'm here on behalf of Bobby and Kay Woods, who have asked me to help oppose this project. I do a number of zoning opposition cases, probably as many as anyone in the state, and one of my standard things is to reach out to the other side to see if there's a path forward. Hearing Ms. Lee tell you all the efforts that have been made was very, it surprised me, because when I called her, she's a represented party, she's got an attorney, so she sent me to an attorney in Tucson. It was about a 60-second conversation. And I could tell you what I told him is said, look, you know, I was speaking for the Woods, but there's the possibility that this project could either be not opposed by the neighbors or supported even. But it's too big, it's too tall, there are some concerns. It was about the quickest conversation I've ever had with an attorney on the other side. I mean, usually they fake it at least and say, well, you know, let's see what we can do. Can we do this? Can we do that? I mean, it was short. So, you know, hearing this today, I think is just not in keeping with what's happened. The one thing I'll say about, it's sort of standard when someone wants to rezone, obviously hear complaints about the current zoning. Well, I mean, the current zoning is known. That's not a mystery to anyone. It's just, just because they want to build a project doesn't mean that they're entitled to this change. And we do need more housing, but not every single project is worthy of support. The other thing I'd say is, you're kind of getting a false choice presented to you, and they talk about how undevelopable the property is now. Well, we also heard the question asked by one of and I was back, I didn't hear which one. They don't want to grade it, or they don't want to do the grading that the previous person said they would do to develop the project. So that's the issue here. And the one last thing I'll say about compromise, you've heard the neighbors come up here and say, last time we went through this project, we didn't love it, right, when we got the zoning change in 2005, but we worked on it, we got down to sort of brass tacks, and we came to a compromise. And that's simply not happened here. For the Woods perspective, it doesn't mean that multi-family housing should not be allowed. It just means that this project is too much for this particular space, so we'd ask you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bob Woods, you're up next, and you will be followed by Kay Wood.
Bobby Woods. This is the first time we've seen this map, and I didn't have a lot of time to take a look at it and react to it, but I'll tell you, along the western property line, you can put single story on grade, 16 feet. You got about 16 feet. So I know the statement about all that area in the red cannot be single story. I know that's not true. With time, I could look at that closer, but I don't appreciate that it came in at the last minute. Okay. Let's go way back. November 21st, November 2021, Miramont made a request for a conditional use permit to allow 152-unit Silverado Lofts development in the existing C2 zoning. The first P&Z Commission hearing was scheduled for the public to review the proposal on December 6, 2021. The property owners within 300 feet of the project were notified. Prior to this first hearing, Miramont could have reached out to our neighborhood in a proactive manner and shared their design concept. Our neighborhood would have informed them at that time that there was an existing ordinance, 463, and then we could have worked based on that existing ordinance. Working together with the neighborhood, Miramont could have developed a design concept that compromised with the neighborhood on the required strict compliance to the existing buffer stipulation and height restrictions, but would still recognize the neighborhood's concerns about traffic, life safety, and stormwater impact. Miramont made a decision to move forward without public input. Mr. Kimberly requested a meeting with Mayor Linsky, City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and city staff. This was the special work session that the public was not invited to. At the special work session on March 8th, 2022, Mr. Kimberly requested a zone change and a minor amendment to the general plan to move forward with Silverado Lofts. Miramont's presentation at the special work session did not recognize or respond to any of the neighborhood's concerns about traffic, environmental impact, life safety, impact of building density and massing, and stormwater pollution. Miramont's presentation at the special work session included an aerial site perspective, a building perspective taken from my backyard. These misleading perspectives did not accurately describe the true impact of the project on the neighborhood. Mr. Kimberly should not be surprised that the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-2 to recommend the City Council denial of approval of Miramont's zone change request and denial of approval for the Silverado lots. During the November 28, 2022 public hearing, the P&Z Commission was able to hear for the first time all the concerns of the existing neighbors, which certainly helped the Commission to make a more informed decision. I strongly urge the City Council to recommend that the current general plan use designation and zoning ordinance 463 be kept in place. That's my beep.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
Thank you.
All right, Kay Wood, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Joanna Bazil. Good evening.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kay Woods. I'm at 1473 South Gray Bar Drive. 2 weeks ago, during the February 7th meeting before City Council, Mr. Kimberly, Marymount CEO, stated he wanted to remind the mayor and City Council that at the special work session meeting, quote, "At that meeting, we had a unanimous approval both by the P&Z and the mayor and the City Council." Why did the City Council and the P&Z come away from such a positive feeling about the proposed Silverado Lofts project following the presentation by Mr. Kimberly and Marymount at the special work session? Number one, there had been no neighborhood input prior to the special work session. Number two, Marymount did not clearly explain during the special work session that apartments were already an allowable use in the existing C2 zoning. Number three, the special work session, the Silverado Lofts project was presented as workforce housing. Number four, Marymount presented inaccurate perspective drawings at the work session, downplaying the actual impact of the development. Number five, there are safety issues of ingress, egress, stormwater, and traffic, and that had not been yet addressed at the special work session. Mr. Kimberly has ignored the existing zoning ordinance 463 and that had protections for our neighborhood, including a 7-foot landscape buffer and height restrictions on limitations on buildings and parking lot lights. Mr. Kimberly pushed back on legitimate concerns during the September 12th neighborhood meeting hosted by Marymount. When our neighbors suggested a single means of egress, that could be a safety issue, Mr. Kimberly stated, quote, "This has been preliminarily reviewed by the fire department. Because of the grade being so severe, the city wouldn't let us put in another egress." Mr. Kimberly continues to describe the Silver Lofts project as workforce housing. At the September 12th meeting, Mr. Kimberly stated, quote, "Our rents will be around $1,700 to $2,300, but don't hold me to that." During the February 7th meeting, a council member asked Mr. Kimberly, "You're saying workforce housing will be affordable?" And Mr. Kimberly responded, "Let's be clear, affordable anymore means nothing." I kindly asked Marymount to stop suggesting that the lowering of the buildings along the west property line had anything to do with the neighbors' concerns about building heights or views. All the lowering of the buildings and roads was required to establish a secondary egress. I strongly urge the City Council to keep a promise made to protect our existing neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Joanna Bazil, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Brenda Eldred. Excuse me, before you speak, Brenda Eldred just said she didn't want to speak, but that she is in opposition to this, so you'll be followed by Michael Mangini. Go ahead.
Okay, hi. I'm Joanna Basil, and I'm one of the neighbors there. I'm on 1431 Gray Bar Drive, actually, and just to say, I mean, everyone has said all the things that, we were all going to say together, so I don't want to just go on and repeat it. It's just so that you know that we're, you can tell that we're a neighborhood that is a community and we're all together on this, and just, again, that compromise is there. We want to work with it. It never was an issue of nothing's going to go back there, you're not going to build behind us, that sort of thing. It was never like that. It was always, we want to work together with whoever it is and just be considered for some things. And then also just, Marymount going under the guise of saying that it's a workforce, housing that we need, and that's a need for Cottonwood and that sort of thing. Well, that may be so, but again, that rent range of $1,700 to $2,300 is not necessarily, I think it was Shannon Boone that did the article in the paper that talked about how, the mean, or the median salary for Cottonwood is, $40,000, just under $40,000. And there's just no way that people can pay those prices for rent. I mean, my husband and I are part of, the workforce here. We work for 2 different districts in the valley, and we couldn't afford that $1,700 to $2,300. So it was just kind of, that part felt a little bit like, that we were trying to be convinced of something that actually wasn't true. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. Michael Mangini, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Mark Ham. You're from Ledbetter Law Firm. I think you know who you are. I can't read your last name. So, Mr. Mangini.
Yeah, Mike Mangini, 302 North Purdy Street, Flagstaff, and P.O. Box 265, Cottonwood. First of all, I do not represent Miramonte. I had represented him on the Mesquite Hills project to get the final plat, and that's when I terminated. Wonderful organization. I just don't really need the work, and honestly, that's why I've terminated, so I don't want to come here kind of describe painting myself as Mr. Kimberly or Mayor Monte's attorney. The city of Cottonwood is rooted in a rich history, committed to time-honored values, and dedicated to the evolving, promising, and sustainable future. That is from your community plan. And what this is a multifamily development right next door to your largest retailers. I don't have to look at their numbers. You have Walmart, and then you have Green Chevrolet. Those are the two big, large retailers you have in this community. It makes 100% sense to put multifamily next to them. That's part of good planning. The other thing is the issues, and I call it popularity of everybody standing up. Well, the popular discussion is the fact that they're flooding, and the issue needs to be resolved, and they're flooding before anything happened on the 11.6 acres. One person last meeting made a comment about the size of an Olympic pool, and so one of those savants, those details perplex me. So I did the calculation. If the 11.6 acres was 100% concrete, so 100% of the water would sheet off and you had a 2-inch rain event, that wouldn't be an Olympic-sized pool. It'd be shy of an Olympic-sized pool, 80-some thousand cubic feet. The amount of detention that's being put on here is, I've calculated that, it's over 70,000 cubic feet. So they're detaining more water than it's gonna otherwise come off this site undeveloped. So I look at this and say, wait a minute, there's some disingenuous in the argument, but the argument of all the neighbors down. I was born and raised on UVX Road. I was down there as a kid all the way into high school, picking rocks out of Mr. Bobin's field, which was our neighbor. The reason is these washes would come down, breach the ditch, and flood the farmland down below. And so my brother and I would go pick it up. But the rocks, some of them were so big we had to get a scoop tractor because he and I couldn't pick them up. That is something that's existed, and it's been ignored by the politicians. And I'm not jumping on you guys. I think you need to participate. But this is county. They vote for their county elected officials. They need to get on top of this. They need to deal with it because most of the water comes from the county. It sheets across everything, and you guys, by chance, have a piece of land in Cottonwood. It goes across your property and continues on down into the county, which is downhill. Got my buzzer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Margini. Mark Hanson, I believe. You're up next, and you're followed by Scott Murray. And Mr. Murray, you'd be the last one to speak unless there's anybody else who would like to speak on this issue. You need to fill out a form so I can get you up here. Otherwise, we're going to close the floor after Mr. Murray and move on with the vote. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to address you here today. Eric Jurison's not here this evening, and I won't pretend to speak for Eric or for Michelle, but Eric highlighted the significant problems that he and his businesses are experiencing in locating and bringing in new employees. And the fact that the housing costs here in the Verde Valley are higher than they are for his employees than they are in Scottsdale. That should be striking. Ladies and gentlemen, I talked 2 weeks ago about the issues that we were having as a small business. That is an issue that almost all small businesses in the Verde Valley are either facing or that we're going to face. Addressing some of the concerns I've heard here tonight, there are good, well-meaning people, friends that I have on both sides of this, and it's going to be a tough decision for the council. What I would encourage the council to look at is a few things. The first is what Mr. Mangini just talked about the value of having an engineered parcel that is designed to handle and to prevent the runoff of additional water, and the condition that that water detention system get examined by an engineer every year and certified in a report to the city. That should deal with the issues that the neighbors and downstream folks have highlighted about flooding. But like Mr. Mangini said, their problems predate any changes to this property. Changing from the flooding to the concerns about views and density. Members of the council, this is going to be an issue that the city and the council faces for every infill project. If the city is dedicated to infill projects, which under the general plan it has to be, and quite frankly, under need and necessity it must be, then you are going to be facing these exact same concerns from neighbors about the density problems, traffic, views. Part of my job is telling people bad news, news that they don't necessarily want to hear. This is not popular news, but in Arizona, as proud of we are of our views here, we do not have a right to our views. And that's not popular. That's not going to make me popular by saying that, but it is true. And to the extent that the city council is going to prevent rezoning on the premise that a prior zoning decision was a promise, there's a lot, I can understand how that tugs at your heart. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, a zoning ordinance change is not a promise, and it can't be, otherwise we can't develop the city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Scott Murray, you're up next, and you'll be followed by whoever it was that just recently submitted a form. Can't read your name. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor and City Council, my name's Scott Murray, and my wife and I have lived in the Verde Valley for 11 years. When we first moved here, it was harder to find a job than it was to find a house. And after the pandemic, we have had less people working and more people staying home because the federal government is funding them to stay home. So building more houses for the federal government to fund more people to stay home is not going to help this city with taxes or anything else. So I ask that you don't allow this to happen because it's not affordable housing for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is it Adams? Yeah. Okay, great.
I wasn't really planning to speak
And then,
tonight.
oh, excuse me, before you start, you'll be followed by Cammie Mulcare.
All right. So first, the thing that Mike just spoke about is the water was always coming. I have videos that I'll gladly share. Walmart and this lot is all the water with no water above them coming down. So it is the problem. This 11.6 acres and Walmart is the problem. In May of 2020, or May of 2001, the city of Cottonwood and Yavapai County were given a tax-funded survey that was done on these drainages in 2001. It's been 22 years that these drainages have been an issue. So every time you allow this development, you're adding to the problem of 22 years. You know, you can say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but when you spend thousands and thousands of dollars a year out of your pocket to fix water coming from the city to the county, it is a problem for us. You know, and we talk about workforce. I own a business here too. We're all looking for employees. This is not a city of Cottonwood problem. This is a nationwide problem. You can go to Phoenix, now hiring. So if you think just building these 152 units, all the workers are gonna show up, this isn't a build it and they will come scenario. There's a worker shortage nationwide. And using that as an excuse to force a project that is in an area that already has problems for 22 years is a bad excuse. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. And Cammie Mulcare, you are up next and last. Good evening.
Hello. I wasn't planning to speak tonight. I don't live in Cottonwood. I have a business in Cottonwood that has been greatly impacted by flooding that the city continues to ignore, myself and Rick Stokes with Sun Country. I have emails on my phone dated January 24th with video to David Haas, I'm gonna butcher his name, Public Works, Hausman. Every time it rains, we flood. The 4 culverts under bedrock that go under 89A, ADOT cleaned out from the Silver Springs Gulch 3 years ago. They're 4 5-foot culverts and they're completely full. And the runaround we get from the city all the time is, we're not creating more water. We've owned bedrock 25 years. 3 years ago, it had to be cleaned, and it needs cleaned again. The city can't manage their water now. You're promising to manage this for them. I'm just speaking to say I don't believe it one bit. These people should not believe it as well. I would highly suggest them to fight this as well, because you guys are not doing what we put you here for, and that's helping the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulcair. All right. That's it for public comment. Let's go ahead and, there's some questions that were asked. I took some notes. I don't know if anybody else took some notes, but, and then some just talking points that I think are worth discussion. So, can we get some clarity on the 100-year flood, the way that's measured? So I think there were some questions around that. I think it'd be helpful to know exactly what that means.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is James Bramble. I'm the Senior Civil Engineer for the city, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding what our requirements are for this development or any other development in the city.
Okay. I know this question's come up many times in the past, but again, just in case there's new folks here this evening, just to get some clarity on that, the 100-year event, what does that mean and what does that measure?
A previous person up here spoke and nailed it right on. It is a statistical storm that is predicted to happen on average the 1% chance in a given year. Statistics, it can happen once every 5 years. It can happen 5 times in 1 year. It is statistics, and that's how it's determined. The actual rainfall depth and intensity is based on historical measurements. You can get them from a number of resources, one being NOAA, the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration. They publish it based on historical rainfall data taken over decades.
Okay. Then I had a question for you while you're here. Cherry Hills Wash, this is, my understanding is that this property only drains into Cherry Hills Wash, but what's above that? What's the total drainage? How many acres drain into that from above?
Certainly. Up above this wash, or total for water that concentrates at State Route 260, which is just downstream from here, measures out at about 841 acres.
That's not specific to Cherry Hills?
It is.
It is? Okay. Okay. Council, do we have any other questions for Mr. Bramble while he's here? Okay. All right, thank you. That was the only specific question that I had written down. Were there any other? Okay, great. All right, well, Council, I think our conversation is going to kind of vacillate between. We'll get there. Thank you for the reminder. We're asked to vote first on this resolution so we know whether or not to move on with the ordinance. But I think our conversation is probably going to go between both agenda items. So let's go ahead and have a conversation around this. We have the applicant here, staff as well, to answer any questions.
Mayor, may I interrupt here just a second? As far as that question, Walmart does inspect their detention basin, and they are now reporting to us on a regular basis. So that is being done. We had requested about a year or so ago to make sure that that got done. It is being done.
Okay. And they do that on an annual basis, and they're submitting the report to the city?
I'll check with Public Works, but I think it's a little bit more often than that. And Public Works does have those reports available.
Okay.
I have been in contact with Walmart. They do have a consultant that they hire that inspects their entire system and submits a full color report to them. I have a copy of the latest one, 60 plus pages, full color inspection of the condition of their underground detention system, any sediment, trash buildup, and recommendations to either clean them or remove trash or any of that is all included with those inspection reports. It looks to be nearly monthly that they're completing those.
And so I understand that they create a report, but do they also follow through and submit a report once the recommendations have been taken care of?
That I don't have, but doing it monthly, they do reference previous reports and what those recommendations were.
Okay, so from what you have seen, they are maintaining their detention basins from the
Correct.
reports you've been given?
Yes.
Okay.
In the reports, have they had to clean out a lot of the silt and stuff? Have they shown buildup?
From the photos that I've seen in the report, there really isn't a lot in there. I mean,
Any other questions for Mr. Bramble?
Yeah, you're saying that they inspect this monthly. When did they start doing that monthly?
So there were some conversations with previous city manager Ron Corbin in cooperation with previous county supervisor Randy Garrison to work with Walmart that started in the last year and a half. I do have a list of those dates that those inspections were taking place, and it is about that time frame, about the last year and a half. I've seen, I think there's probably around 14 of these inspections that they have the date on that these were completed.
So these inspections are being done monthly. Is that only when it's raining or literally monthly?
The records that I've seen, it's nearly monthly, rain or no rain.
What is nearly monthly?
So they might miss a month, it might be every other month, but from what I've seen in the last year and a half, it's 14 out of 16 months, 18 months. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is almost monthly, rain or no rain.
What are the stipulations? If they're supposed to get it monthly, what is the penalty for not getting it monthly, and do we have something like that?
There is no stipulation. They're doing this because they were approached with these concerns.
So we don't have an ordinance. I know we've talked about it in the past, and I know we can't get too far off the rails with this conversation, but I know that we've talked about putting an ordinance in place to have inspections on some of these culverts and what all throughout the city. Isn't that correct?
There's been discussions. I do not believe there's an ordinance in place. We asked them to do it, and they started to do it on a regular basis, on a fairly regular basis. That's the same question we posed to this particular project, that they would have to go ahead and do it, and they've said that they would comply.
But I had a question on that, though, and I think it is directly relevant to tonight's discussion because we have very similar language in our proposed stipulation. And that is, I don't know that it matters how frequently the inspections are occurring so much as what happens next. And I think this goes to Councilmember Duvernay's point. Here we have language that says that the inspection shall happen at least annually, and then the detention systems, and I believe this is all encompassed as well, shall be maintained as necessary. It's my understanding in the historical area that we were discussing first, that we don't have any real teeth to who defines what's necessary and then what happens next. And I think that is a valid concern as far as this stipulation for this project. It might be inspected, but then what are the next steps? What is the maintenance that's happening? Who determines what's necessary? And what is the compliance aspect of that piece?
I don't have the answer to that. You know, I have the ability to recommend the stipulations that are included, and we can add to that, you know, there is maintenance responsibilities as well. I can't speak for the designer of this project, but a lot of these, if you design it properly, they're pretty low maintenance.
Now, there is a stipulation in this proposed ordinance that would require them to both inspect and maintain. Is that correct?
But the language is, it's number 9, I believe, and it just says shall be maintained as necessary. And I don't know how that would then be interpreted, and who, you know, what that looks like moving forward. And I think it's my understanding that's how we got into the situation that we're at now with the current development, and the inspections appear to be happening, but then what's happening next?
Mm-hmm. You're referencing Walmart, you mean? Yeah. Well, when Walmart was built, we didn't consider the stipulation. We went in after the fact and asked for compliance. So I think in this case, we're trying to get ahead of it. And I would think if they submit a report to us that says their detention basin isn't performing as designed, do we have enough teeth built into the stipulation the way it's written to force them to maintain it such that it performs as it should.
There's certainly enough language to start that enforcement effort.
Okay. Okay. Since we're on the topic of stormwater runoff, I know that the county and the cities come together like in 2001 with that plan. I know a lot of things were identified in that plan that would help mitigate flood water damage for those that live at the bottom of the V in our community. I understand that a lot of that involved easements, significant easements across private property, and landowners at that time weren't too favorable to those recommendations. Unfortunately, for better or worse, well, for worse, I don't think much has really happened since then to address the regional issue, and that this is a regional issue of stormwater runoff. And I think we've all experienced these larger-than-life storms occurring more frequently than we've never experienced before. And so I understand it's a great concern to those who live along a drainage. I have had conversations with our new county supervisor about this issue. We've had folks in to speak with us about it, residents that are concerned. So, we weren't meeting as frequently as we used to in the past with our intergovernmental meetings, but we do have a mayor's association that meets every couple of weeks where the mayors and managers get together. I have brought this issue up with them, and we do have a scheduled intergovernmental meeting where we can again speak with all of our colleagues across the valley and let them know that this is a regional concern of ours. It's going to require some regional collaboration, and it's going to be something that will be bigger than all of us combined. I think it's something that's going to need some heavy hitters to come in and help us find some serious solutions. It becomes, it's a challenge, I think, just in getting all of us on the same page, but I am committed to making sure that we all work together towards that regional solution. However, I don't feel that the amount of stormwater that's currently occurring on this property, I feel confident that they have done everything they can to make sure that no more water will leave the property as it currently does. So given the size of the watershed above, and we're dealing with just 11 acres, I can't believe that small parcel will impact those further downstream along that Cherry Hill wash.
By ordinance, that is absolutely the requirement. The peak runoff from that piece of property will not be increased with any development that takes place on that piece of property.
Okay. All right. Anything else, council, on stormwater? Thank you. Okay. Any other council members want to jump in here? You're more than welcome.
When they did talk to us before, they did talk about this being workforce housing. The price points we've heard talked about tonight are $1,700 to $2,300, but they've also, the developers have said they're going to have increased costs with all of these new things that they're doing. So my concern is, how much is that going to increase those price points for the rents? They're already not going to be affordable for our minimum wage and just above minimum wage retail workers. So how is it going to be workforce housing at all?
Okay. I can't answer that. If you're directing the question to the developer,
I am directing that question to whoever can possibly answer it. I don't know who that is.
Council, as we talked earlier, you have a shortage of housing. So we talked about, with your housing assessment plan, identified over 2,700 units. That was over 2 years ago. You're well up into the 3,000 units that you need now. So I heard earlier about a bunch of apartments are being built. Well, as far as I know, only one developer that has recently been approved is under construction. So I think they have 192 units maybe. You don't have enough for what the current need is. So other people had said, well, build it and they will come. We're not talking about build it and they will come. We're not saying we're going to build units and then the workforce will come. We're saying your current workforce doesn't have anywhere to live. They're living in their fifth wheels. They're living in other people's houses. They have nowhere to live. And I also heard the lady who runs the Humane Society, people are turning in their dogs and moving out of Cottonwood because you don't have enough housing currently for your residents. You build more, the rents go down. We are not an affordable housing project. We never claimed to be an affordable housing project. If you want your rents in this community to go down and to be affordable for your workforce, approve our project and other projects like ours. And yes, we do have other plans in Cottonwood. We were excited about Cottonwood. When we put our stake in the ground for Mesquite Hills, we love this community. We have had wonderful experience working with the planners and trying to create a project that we're proud of. And we do have another 19 acres that we're considering. But I'm going to tell you that 19 acres that was presented before, it has serious challenges. And when I'm talking serious, we have major relocations. That's a project that may or may not be viable. This project is before you today. Let's not talk about other projects that may or may not come. And if they do, then good, because you need them. We just talked about it. You need over 182 units per year. You're behind. You're 2 years behind. And I'm from Flagstaff. Let me tell you something about Flagstaff's housing crisis. They're up over 7,000 units. And you know why? It's because council members failed to take action when it was right in front of them that they needed to take action today. So every year it was, that's not a good site. That's not the good site. That's going to impact somebody's views. That's going to impact this person. And you know what? The NIMBYs come out. We are here today, and if you continue to defer a project, this project, the next project that's infill, that impacts someone's views, you're gonna be the same condition as Flagstaff. And their average price of a house right now is up over $700,000, $800,000. Northern Arizona, secret's out. California's coming. Keep this area affordable for its workforce and approve our project. It's supply and demand.
Thanks, Ms. Lee. Any other questions for Ms. Lee? No? All right. So, did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Regarding the, a lot of comments around the promises broke, given that the ordinance passed in 2005, the ordinance 463. I understand that concern, and I think it's important when you're thinking of relocating or buying a piece of property, you look at the zoning around you. That's kind of the first thing that you should do, so you understand what you're up against, especially if there's a vacant parcel. 2005 was a long time ago, and there were 2 general plans since then. And things change in our community. And so, it is our job as participants in the general plan, which is approved by the voters, to respond to those changes and try to enact policies that react accordingly. And while I can understand it, it may feel like a promise broke, I also feel like change is really inevitable. And in this city, there's a very public process for any proposed change, and we have followed that public process. And there was never a meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council that was not open to the public. It was noticed as every other meeting, and we invite the public to come in and share their concerns with us. So again, our job, facing what we face here with not enough housing, as we all know, there's not enough housing. And knowing that our general plan has identified areas that are ripe for development to achieve some of our community goals. And while it may not be affordable housing for those earning the median income in Cottonwood, it is still, I believe, workforce housing, and it is filling a void that we have in our community. And those who are moving here tend to displace, because there's not enough housing on the market, they tend to displace those who are living here can't afford, lower priced homes or apartments. And so they're taking up those units and displacing others. And I think that's something that was indicated by our housing study. And I think it's something that we're trying to respond to here. Any other thoughts that council would like to share?
I actually don't agree, respectfully. And I understand this isn't a popularity contest, but during the work session, there was not a call to the public. And so now as this matter has developed, we are balancing two very important needs. The first is housing of really any price range, whether it's affordable workforce or not. That is an identified and stated need here. I'm a small business owner myself, and I understand very full and well and appreciate the challenges with recruiting folks to the area because of the lack of housing. I also am very sympathetic to the concerns about drainage and stormwater, and I hear what you're saying. The county is looking at this issue right now, but for now, until they have done something to address the issue, I think it is very interesting to suggest that development does not exacerbate drainage issues and the runoff issue. And to me, again, that's the most compelling thing that we've heard tonight. I do agree with some of the items, especially what staff had said. This location does appear to be an appropriate location for multifamily housing with where it's at. However, this particular proposal, we've heard from the community, both in and outside of city limits, some of the very significant concerns, and I tend to agree with the stormwater at least.
So, I'm sorry, you feel that regarding the stormwater concerns, that we shouldn't move forward with this development until those are
At this
resolved?
point, I don't agree with this development as presented, and respectfully to the developer, I believe that this council has worked hard to approve developments, to loosen restrictions in our ordinances to try to encourage development, but yet we've also tried to hold true to our community values. And to me, development is exacerbating the drainage in the area. This is an issue that needs to be addressed, and I don't agree with moving forward with this project at this time. And I understand I might be in the minority, but really, to me, that's really my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Okay.
And I would think if we're going to be looking at housing, which we all know we need to address the drainage issue first. I mean, I know it's the community, but we've got to do something about it, because every project that comes up is going to create more of this, right?
Well, I would argue that the engineers are saying that there will be no more runoff than what currently exists on the parcel.
No, I agree, yeah.
Okay.
And I do want to pause there, because I think I actually would like to interject on behalf of our city staff. We've heard some comments about our public works director and our city engineer. I think very highly of both of those positions. They do hard work for the city, and really at the end of the day, they're giving us the analysis that is based on statistics. Whether or not those statistics hold true, what we see in the videos and in real life, I do appreciate that they do give us information that they're trained and qualified to give us in their opinions as well.
I mean, I guess my concern is that if we're looking at a regional drainage study, one, and then a plan to implement changes that will reduce stormwater runoff at the bottom of the valley. I think we're probably talking years, multiple years, maybe even 5 to 10 years to implementation. So I'm concerned that we would be putting development on hold if what we require is that they can prove that no more stormwater is going to run off the property than currently exists in its natural state. But we want to put that on hold until we do a regional study that's going to stop development for I think several years. So it's just a concern.
Mayor, may I add, you did mention that in 2001, the county had a plan to take care of the flooding issues over on UVX Road. And they did have issues and they had the funding for it, but they had issues with easements on those particular properties. A recent meeting that they had also highlighted, I believe, 16 different areas along the Cottonwood ditch that need work, and of course, this is one of those 16 areas. At this point in time, the solution that they had back then is cost prohibitive for the county. They're going to have to look for some sort of financing sources. Our direction is to go ahead and collaborate with them as much as we possibly can. However, they realize that this is a county issue that needs to be taken care of.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns that council would like to share? Okay. Go ahead, Vice Mayor. Mayor, can you hear me? Yes.
Don't do anything, it's going to get worse. That's a fact. It just makes sense in my mind that this should get better. It would help, and we still need a county meeting, and it's a regional issue, as you said. Secondly, income housing. We need both. We need all. So I'm absolutely in this project, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, then I believe it's time just to call for a vote. We'll see where council lands on this. So I'll motion then to approve resolution number 3155. And there's no second, it just dies. Okay. What's that?
You need a second?
Well, if there's no second, it'll die. We won't be able to get a roll call vote to find out where council lands on this issue. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, then let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember DeWillis.
No.
Councilmember Duvernay.
No.
Councilmember Henry.
No.
Councilmember Karat.
No.
Councilmember Naren.
No.
Vice Mayor Weldon.
Yes.
And Mayor Linsky.
Yes. So the motion fails.
The motion fails.
Okay. All right, so in light of that, there's no need to move on then to the next item, which is ordinance number 727. Correct?
Mr. Mayor, I'd recommend that you take a vote on the ordinance. You have an operative provision in your zoning ordinance that talks about denied zoning amendments.
Okay.
I'm not sure where you'd land on that if you didn't take a vote on the zoning ordinance one way or the other.
Okay, we'll do that. Before we do, let me have our deputy clerk read resolution number 3155 by title only.
It didn't.
I'm sorry. Never mind. Thanks for keeping me in check. Okay, so then let's go ahead and get staff up here to present information on ordinance number 727, which is amending the zoning.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think you've already had the
Okay,
presentation.
great, then we'll
You
just
can
take a vote on
take
it.
the vote
Okay,
for the
fine.
record. And just for the record, because the plan amendment, the plan won't allow for it, but I'm suggesting you put on the record your vote on the ordinance.
Vote on the ordinance. Okay, so let me just read the full title here, folks. Bear with me. Ordinance number 727, amending the zoning for approximately 11.6 acres of land located at 1432 South Silverado Drive, Yavapai County Assessor's Parcel Number 406-12-042E from C2 Heavy Commercial with stipulations to PAD Planned Area Development. This is the second final reading. Okay, so, council, any discussion? No, okay. Deputy Clerk, please, well, I'll motion to approve. Is that what you need me to do? Motion to approve, ordinance number 727.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Karat seconded it, and let's have our roll call vote.
Councilmember DeWillis?
Yeah.
Councilmember Duvernay?
No.
Councilmember Henry?
No.
Councilmember Karat?
No.
Councilmember Naren?
No.
Vice Mayor Wilden?
Yes.
And Mayor Linsky?
Yes. Okay, so the ordinance fails as well.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks for being here this evening, and it was a little clunky toward the end, but appreciate you sticking with us. All right, we'll just move on. I think folks can, if you're leaving, you can leave quietly. We'd appreciate it. Otherwise, we're going to move on to presentation, discussion, and acceptance of the city's annual financial reports for fiscal year 2022.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kirsten Lennon, the Financial Services Director for the City of Cottonwood. Tonight, we're going to have Kenneth Poon, who is the managing partner, owner of the Poon Group that is our auditors. He's going to present a presentation on our annual comprehensive financial report. They also did our single audit, which audits all of our federal grant funds that we receive. They did our HERF report, which is our Highway User Revenue Fund report, and they did our helped work on our annual expenditure limitation report, which were all included in the packet. So he is going to present from Teams, and hopefully he is on there right now. He should be unmuted. Hopefully he can hear me.
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Now you can see myself in the video.
Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And again, thank you, Kristen, for introducing me. My name is Ken Poon, the managing partner of the firm. And I do apologize. The engagement partner, Andrew Roth, has a conflict with another meeting, but I'm going to do the presentation for tonight. Let me share my screen real quick, and then we'll go from there. Can you all see my screen? Okay, so this is a standard presentation, and thank you so much for having the Poon Group to present, to perform the audit service for the city of Cottonwood there. So what I'm going to cover tonight is the scope of work, audit responsibility, the approach up to the audit, the accounting change, and then the overview of the financial statement, pulling out some key financial indicator and key pension information, and last but not least is the audit results. So the scope of work, as Christian said, we actually performed the audit on the annual comprehensive financial report, as the city expend more than $750,000 of federal expenditure. You also do need a single audit, but we also do have two other reports: annual expenditure limitation report, highway user revenue fund report, and then other non-attached service is actually assisting the city in preparing these financial statements. So our audit responsibility kind of break it down by the two areas. One is on management. Management is fully responsible for these financial statements by presenting these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principle in the United States of America. the Governmental Accounting Standard Board is the standard setting bodies for state local governments. So the cities should adopt sound accounting policies surrounding the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, establish those pronouncements and establishing your accounting policy. You're also required to establish and maintain proper internal control, provide evidence supporting to the amount and the disclosure in the financial statement, fair presentation of the financial statement that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or errors. And last but not least, you do need to have programs to prevent and detect fraud. Our responsibility is to perform the audit in conformity with the generally accepted auditing standard and the government auditing standard. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have and communicate with those charged with governance. That means we are here to present it to the City Council here. We assess the audit risk, also determine the fair presentation of the financial statement, render our audit opinion, and then issue any recommendations if we have any. Our approach to the audit basically break it down into 4 phases. The first phase is what we call the detailed planning phase, which understanding the initial understanding of the current fiscal year unique transactions, and then understanding the any new pronouncement that has a implication to your financial statement. Phase 2 is the risk base of the audit, which actually this phase of the audit focusing on internal control. We do look at financial reporting, look at how you do your closing, look at all the revenue cycle, including the billing, the revenue recognition, and the cash receipt process. On the expense side, we look at purchasing, accounts payable, and disbursement process. Very importantly, payroll and the related party, related liabilities, a big expenditure on your financial statement. And last but not least is the general IT control. Phase 3 is actually focusing on the account balance. So which is when you close your books on June 30, we actually look at your account balance as of June 30, 2022 on all the balance sheet account, and then also looking at the year on revenue, expenses, and the capital related expenditure. Last but not least is the preparation of the financial statement and issuance of our audit opinions. For the current fiscal year, as I said, GASB never changed. So that's why we do have like a couple new GASB pronouncements, and I'm not going to bore you to death, but I would like to point it out. The big pronouncement here is the GASB 87 on leases, which changed the accounting on leases. In the past, you only break it down on like recording leases on capital lease, but now with the current standard, we are required to look at the lessor side and the lessee side, so that we are recording the lease receivable and the lease liability, depending on what side of the accounting. But it is a major impact on your financial statement for the current fiscal year. The other couple statements, including number 89 on accounting for interest costs, number 92 omnibus, number 93 replacement on the interbank offer rate, and then 97 on components unit criteria. And all of these has minimal impact to your financial statement. Kind of give you an overview of the financial statement. The city actually ended with a net position of about like $39 million for the governmental activities. $36 million is invested in capital asset. Net of related debt, the restricted is about like $12.6 million, resulting in unrestricted deficit of about like close to $9.7 million. And take a look at the change in position. The revenue is kind of break it down by program revenue versus general revenue. So total program revenue, which is included the charges for service, operating grants, and capital grants of about like $9.8 million. And general revenue is about like $29.1 million. The total expenses was about like $28 million. $28.5 million. That means you do have an increase in your net position by $10.5 million, which is a pretty good operating results for the governmental activities. When we look at the business type activities, the city ended with the total net position of about like $59 million. $24.3 million was net investment in capital asset. $8.1 million is restricted by third party or enabling legislation, and then the unrestricted remaining to $26.5 million. Compared to last year, $50 million, so the difference was about like $8.1 million compared to last year. So when you see the $8.1 million, which is a really, really great result, total program revenue, which is $17.3 million, like $4 million, mainly is coming from charges for service and some operating grants. And then the revenue is mainly the investment earnings. So this year you have some, like we need to actually recording the unrealized gain or loss on investment. So that's why your general revenue, you see a negative amount. So total $8.1 million increase in your net position. So total fund balance, like the general fund is the main operating fund of the city, so that's why the fund balance is very important. So $18.1 million compared to last year was pretty similar. $18.2 million is dropping about like 93,000. 71,000 was non-spendable. 4.3 was committed. $1 million is assigned, which is actually assigned to a certain program, and then the unassigned for $12.7 million. Total expenditure, the 93,000 was decreased your fund balance by mainly looking at the revenue, $30 million, expenditure, $23 million, and then other financing sources and uses, mainly is the transfer, the net transfer about like $7.1 million, so resulting the decrease in fund balance of about like $93,000. A couple of financial indicator and pension information. We always look at on the governmental side, we look at the net cost of service compared to the tax and state share revenue. So this year you have a pretty good result. So 64% compared to last year, 87%. The other one of the key ratio is the unassigned fund balance to the annual expenditure. The unassigned fund balance was about like $12.7 million compared to the annual expenditure, $23 million. So it's a 53%. GFOA have recommended a 2 months of 2 months of the unassigned fund balance to the annual expenditure as a best practice, so which is equal to 16.67%, and the city do have about like 53%, which is about the best practice as recommended by GFOA. A couple of the things, the city has a cost sharing plans on pension and OPEB. So total pension plan, the total liability reported was about like $9.4 million, $9.7 million for the pension plan. The health benefits supplemental plan is on the asset side, $366,000, and then the long-term disability plan is about like $15,000. So if the discount rate dropped by 1%, the net pension and OPEB liability can go up to $15 million, and vice versa. The discount rate increased by 1%, the total net pension and OPEB liability would drop it to $4.6 million. Same thing for the PSPRS agent plan. Total aggregate total will be $4 million of net pension and OPEB asset. Every single one of them, it's actually include like pretty much on the asset side, which is fully funded using a discount rate of 7.3%. $1.3 million. $1.3 million for if the discount rate dropped by 1% to $1.2 million as a liability, and then the other one, like if vice versa, the discount rate will if it increased by 1%, your total net pension and OPEB asset will increase to $8.3 million. The PSPR cost sharing plan, total aggregate total, $36,000 as an asset. So the aggregate total, if the discount rate dropped by 1%, it can be a liability of only like $6,000, and vice versa. If the discount rate increased by 1%, the total net pension asset will be increased to 67,000. So, which is a pretty good result, as you can see on all your pension plan. You are in the pretty much fully funded position. So, which is a really great result. The other results by opinion unit that we issue all opinion unit an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respect in accordance with generally accepted accounting principle. Significant accounting policy have been consistently applied. The estimates are reasonable, and the disclosure are properly reflected in the financial statement. For the Highway User Revenue Fund and the Annual Expenditure Limit Report, we are all in compliance. And then last but not least, the single audit report, we are required to audit the major federal program, and same thing, it's an unmodified opinion, which state that the city comply in all material respect with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on those programs. And then that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Poon. Do we have any questions, council? So to be clear, there were no findings?
No
right?
findings.
Which is like second or third year in a row, I think we've had 0 findings?
Second year. in a
Second
row.
year, okay. But when there were findings, it was like, you know.
Minimal.
Pretty minimal. Great job. Good
Thank you.
work. Yeah, thank you, sir, for being with us this evening. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Anything else, Ms. Lennon?
You need to approve
Okay.
Are you ready for a motion?
I am.
Mr.
Go right
Mike?
ahead.
Okay. I move to accept the City of Cottonwood's annual comprehensive financial report, single audit, annual expenditure limitation report, and highway user revenue fund report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Henry made the motion. Councilmember Karat seconded it. Let's get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember DeWillis,
Yes.
Councilmember Duvernay,
Yes.
Councilmember Henry,
Yes?
Councilmember Karat,
Yes.
Councilmember Naren,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilden,
Yes.
and Mayor Linsky.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Great, thank you. Okay, next and last under new business is ordinance number 731, implementing a registration requirement and other regulations for short-term vacation rental properties. This is the first reading. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kirsten Lennon, Financial Services Director. The state enacted a new law this year that allows us to pass this ordinance so that we can monitor and kind of know the number of vacation rentals or short-term rentals that are within the city limits. There were several things that you could adopt as part of this ordinance, and we did not elect to do all of them. We want them to make sure that they're notifying us that they have a short-term rental. They're notifying their neighbors that they have a short-term rental. They're giving us contact information for emergency contact in case there's some violation of any ordinance or zoning or law at that rental. We also are requesting that they give us their TPT license number so that we can track and make sure that they are paying their transient lodging taxes and their hotel taxes. And then the other item that we are planning on doing is we're going to keep this like our current business registration process, which is a $50 annual fee. We will send out notices after it's adopted, letting all the homeowners in the area know that this is a new registration if they have a vacation rental, and they'll be required to do a $50 annual fee, hopefully forever. With that, the ordinance is attached, and I'm open for any questions.
All right, questions for Ms. Lennon? I know that they gave us permission to regulate these in limited fashion some time back. Have any other cities done some sort of regulation, and how is that going for them?
Most of the cities in the area are working on an ordinance. I know Sedona's working on an ordinance. I'm not sure about Clarkdale. I do know that Mesa and the city of Phoenix and Tempe all passed an ordinance that required registration or a license, and a lot of them did it recently because of all the stuff that was happening with the Super Bowl, and they did all that so that they could monitor those things. So I know that it's working in those areas, and so it is a good tool to be able to track and monitor those.
And then do you feel like, because a lot of this seems like it will be difficult to manage from a staff time perspective. Do you feel like you're going to be able to manage that and enforce it?
We chose the path that we thought we could manage. So there were a lot of other things that you could require as part of the ordinance. You could require the homeowner to monitor and find out if they have any sex offender offenses on record or insurance requirements. We went with a basic, we just want to know that you are renting your home and be able to contact you. And then as having this be like our business registration process, we have in our current accounting software the ability to send out renewal notices and to collect that information and store it in that software.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it'll roll out. My biggest concern is that anyone who owns or manages a short-term rental will need to let their neighbors know, but they just need to attest that they let their neighbors know. I mean,
They
what
just need to
happens?
post that that they are renting, and it has to be posted. I think within 30 days is what the ordinance says. Post somewhere on their property and let their neighbors know.
Okay. Okay. Thoughts, concerns?
So the proposed ordinance reflects our prior discussions as a group. Our hands are significantly tied by the legislature, and to me, this is a step in the right direction. I think we've all heard, especially our neighbor Sedona, their concerns about short-term rentals and the effect and impact it's had on their long-term rental availability. Less of a problem here, however, this is a reasonable ordinance. As Ms. Lennon said, there were some additional items authorized by the legislature for a town or city to implement that aren't being implemented. I think the notification to the neighbors is helpful because, as the proposed language says, they need to provide a point of contact for 24 hours. So if you have a neighbor with a short-term rental, you're able to reach out and directly to the point of contact, communicate your concerns. And that, to me, is important to try to foster the type of community that we have here in Cottonwood.
Yeah, and I agree. I guess what I worry about is if there is a short-term rental in a neighborhood and there's a loud party or whatnot, and then the neighbors complain and they say, well, they never did let me know, and then they wind up just contacting staff to complain about it rather than the owner, and then it turns into just really labor-intensive for staff to try to manage all of these issues. And I wish they'd given us a little bit more leeway on better regulations. I know that, like Councilmember Henry says, our hands are really tied. And this is completely reasonable. I just want to make sure that we're not overburdening staff. And I guess if we are, we can certainly readdress it.
Yeah, we can certainly look at it after the program has been in place for a year and see what happens. I mean, I don't see that it's going to be, there's not that many that we're aware of, and I don't think it's like Sedona. We are not as popular for that type of short-term rental as Sedona is. I think we can handle it, and we'll let you know if we can't.
So we're not going to see a budget request for a new position to enforce this ordinance?
Not this year.
Okay.
Is that fair?
We'll just borrow Sedona's
Yes.
enforcement, yeah. All right, well, this is the first reading. I didn't receive any forms on anybody here to speak about this item, but I think there's nothing else. We'll just go ahead and ask you, Deputy Clerk, to read ordinance number 731 by title only.
Ordinance number 731, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the Municipal Code, Title 5, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations by adding a new section 5.08, short-term rentals and vacation rentals, regulating short-term rentals and vacation rentals, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, and providing for severability, providing for penalties, and establishing an effective date.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we're going to get on now to the call to the public. Before we do, Council, do we need a quick 5-minute break? Yeah, we're going to take 5. So bathrooms are in the hall. Stay with us. We'll be right back in 5 minutes and listen to call to the public. All right, folks, if you wouldn't mind, let's all take our seats. We're going to go ahead and get the call to the public started for this meeting. I do appreciate you all sticking around for as long as you did. We may have lost a few of you, but it looks like most of you are still here, so I appreciate that very much. Again, this is call to the public, so I'll just reread it again for those who are new arrivals. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda for discussion and/or action, and comments are limited to a 3-minute time period. So all but one of you is here to speak about the Pride event that's coming to Cottonwood April 8th. We can't have a conversation about it. We can't talk to you about it. It's not on the agenda. I know I went over this last time. But you all have 3 minutes of time. You can come up and tell us your concerns around the event, whether you're for it or you're against it. If somebody's already spoken and said pretty much what you want to say, you can still come up and just say, I'm opposed, I'm in favor, or just keep it real brief. That way we can, get out of here at a decent hour. And then I know I said it last time. I'm going to say it again. You guys are great during our other controversial agenda item. I appreciate your respect. Again, out of respect for others, please hold your applause. We're not recording that in any way, so it doesn't matter one way or the other. I know a lot of folks out there have been respectful. Just thumbs up, thumbs down. That's great. It's a good way to show your support or not, and it's not interruptive to what we're doing up here. And please speak directly to council. Let's try not to single out any council members, and don't ask questions of us because we can't answer you. And please don't turn around and ask questions of the audience or make a spectacle of your time up here. I hope you feel like we move efficiently through this and we run a pretty respectful, tight meeting, so I would appreciate all of you participating in that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to cue you up, same as I did before. So first up will be Jeff Dutton, and you'll be followed by Kelly Moffitt. Mr. Dutton, did you stick with us? Okay, we may have lost Mr. Dutton. His complaint wasn't to do with the event on April 8th. It was to do with speeding at 527 North Verde Heights Drive. So we've noted that. Mr. Moffitt, thanks again for sticking around, and following you will be Doug Holz.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for that last vote. Anyway, I'll make this very quick. I am vehemently opposed to the drag queen event. I think there were some mistakes made when someone signed them up for this, and the council needs to make sure you don't exacerbate the situation by repeating additional mistakes. So I'm recommending 2 things. One, look at it from a risk management perspective. You're going to have children mixed in with a group. There's drinking involved. I don't know who's going to make sure that the kids belong to whoever they say they're with at this event, but I don't think there's a good process for that. Children don't belong at this event. This is a highly sexualized environment. It's not appropriate for kids, okay? It's beyond R-rated, in my opinion. Look around the nation, you can see what's going on with these sorts of things. There are at least 6, perhaps 7 states that are actually putting forward legislation right now to highly regulate them, if not outlaw them altogether. So I'm opposed to them, but my request of you is look at the risk management. If one child is hurt, the city is going to be construed as a co-partner in this, co-sponsor, and there's going to be a problem. You're going to, for all of us, if the city gets sued. So take a look at that. The risk of saying no to the group is far less than the risk of a child getting damaged or hurt. So I want you to think about that. And my last point is, if you have to put a stipulation on it, I don't know whether the council is going to fall on the issue ultimately, but no children should be allowed in there. Just one stipulation, no kids. There's no reason, there's no redeeming value to having children there whatsoever. So just say no to children in there. I'm a grandparent, and I've got 4 little kids. If one of them somehow ended up in that event, and I knew about it, but wasn't told in advance, it'd be trouble for somebody, I'll tell you what. So anyway, I don't want to make idle threats, but no children is the only stipulation you should have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Tammy Reborg, I believe. Mr. Holst isn't with us anymore, but Tammy Reborg, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Dawson Rice. Evening.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. As I stated, I'm against it. I really wish that this could be on the agenda. I know it is not. We would like to ask questions of you and have a discussion with you. So if you could have it on the agenda next time, that'd be great. The other thing that I thought of, and the previous speakers spoke to that a bit, you are opening up Cottonwood to all sorts of other groups that maybe you personally will like or not like to come and have events here. Because once you open Pandora's box, that was what this is doing, it's not going to be easy to close. And like the previous speaker said, there is no place for anybody under 18 at this sort of event. Whether they're with their parents or legal guardians, if they are, I don't think those are very good parents or legal guardians, because that is not a place for children. And speaking from a teacher's perspective, I've seen a lot of children, and that is not good for them. Children have a lot of things to work through in their lives. Let's not confuse them with this type of thing and taking them and allowing them to be at an event like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dawson Rice, you're up next, followed by Lisa Prachia.
Hi, my name is Dawson Rice. I'm a freshman at Mingus Union High School. I play football and baseball, as well as showing and breeding pigs in the FFA. I attend church every Sunday and stay active in my community. I love Arizona and the Verde Valley, so I wanted to voice my opinion to protect her. We as the citizens of this beautiful town gather here today in peaceful protest of this pride tour coming to our town to indoctrinate us as a community and the youth. If you think that we won't take a stand and do something about it, then you are sorely mistaken. We are here fighting in opposition, but we can't do it alone. Council members and mayor, when you took your oath to office, you swore to be of the people, for the people, and by the people. And council members, we are the people. So we are calling on you to set aside your personal politics and to uphold your oath and to not turn a blind eye to the situation. And to truly listen to us as a community and help us shut this down. I pray that you will truly hear us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Lisa Prachia, you're up next, followed by Kenny Prachia.
Hi, I'm Lisa Prachia of Cottonwood, and I'm here just to ask that you put this topic on a future agenda. And I will be here every council meeting until that time to request the same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Prachia. And next is Kenny Prachia, followed by Jacqueline Leslie.
Kenny Prachia, and I would just like to support all that I've heard so far. I am against this. I'm a Christian. This is of no value to anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jacqueline Leslie, followed by Stephanie Earle.
My name is Jacqueline Leslie. I do not live in Cottonwood. I live in Clarkdale. And I want to thank you both, all of you, for the vote that you did prior to this agenda here. My problems are, I'm part of We the People, and you saw them, all these people stand up, and we are here for our children and our grandchildren, in some cases, our great-grandchildren. This is not acceptable for children in any form. And I don't know who suggested this, because I didn't hear about it until, I was in Phoenix at the last meeting, so I wasn't involved. I don't know what went on. And it's not like I've got a 9-to-5 job. I've got a 24 to 24-hour job with life and et cetera. But the thing is, this is about our children, and they do not need to be involved in this. It is all sexual abuse. Please do not have it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Stephanie Earle, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Jen Richards.
Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Stephanie Earle, as mentioned, and I am strongly opposed to the Miss Nature's Arizona Pride Tour, which will be bringing the art of drag to our rural community that welcomes children of all ages while serving alcohol and providing free aid testing. I agree that if you could consider please putting it on an agenda. I also work with children every day. I am employed at the school district, so I do not think this is something that is beneficial to the children in our community, and I strongly oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Richards, you're up next, followed by Sharon Bonney. Jen Richards, are you with us? Okay, she's in opposition. Are you Jen Richards? No, Sharon. Yes, Sharon. Bonnie, you're up next, and then you'll be followed by Miss O'Daniel, Down O'Daniel.
Good evening. The role of the adult, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. The role of the adult is to protect kids. One of the ways is to give them a period of innocence. Children deserve some years of innocence. The city of Cottonwood allowing parents to bring their children to a drag show with performers named Ecstasy and performers who do the spread eagle robs children of their innocence.
Thank you. Miss O'Daniel, you're up next, followed by Barry Jones. And Mr. Jones, if looks like you're on it. Thank you, sir.
That's good. I think so. Is that loud enough?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Mayor and city councilors, big media has played an enormous role in normalizing the drag queen agenda, intimidating the opposition into silence by constantly playing the tolerance and hate speech cards. But there is a very dark side to drag shows. When real news broke about drag queen star Alberto Garza in Houston, Texas, being a convicted child sex offender, the media went mostly silent. He was convicted in 2009 of aggravated sexual assault of an 8-year-old child. Also in Houston, drag queen William Dees was convicted of sex crimes against children ages 4, 5, 6, and 8, was jailed and listed as a, quote, high-risk sex offender, close quote. These facts were not released by city officials or their police department, but were uncovered by the moms and dads in Houston. Also, drag queen Dylan Pontiff admitted in a public testimony, quote, "This is going to be the grooming of the next generation," close quote. And the founder of Drag Queen Story Hour in New York stated that there is, quote, "a need for more queer programming for children," close quote. Might these facts possibly be of interest to parents and anyone committed to the safety of children in our town? Have the April 8 entertainers been vetted by you and by our police department and the results made public, assuring Cottonwood residents that they are not convicted sex offenders? These questions need to be answered. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus chants, quote, "We'll convert your children." But do they know and care that the Lord Jesus Christ, creator and savior of the world, warned in Luke 17:2, quote, "It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were cast into the sea than that he should cause one of these little ones to stumble." And in Revelation 21:8, Jesus, the final judge of everyone who ever lived, declared, quote, "The unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers," from the Greek word meaning pornos, "and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire forever." But today Jesus declares, quote, "Repent and be saved from your sins, which all of us have needed to do. I must again request that the Pride show scheduled for April 8 be canceled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Daniel. Barry Jones, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Ken Miller.
Honorable Mayor and Council. Much has been said about rights, the rights of all parties in regard to the drag show event planned for our city. However, the real question is, what are the limitations of public sexual exhibitions? Which the drag show is, as evidenced by Mr. Hall's public invited statements. A large segment of citizens regards the abandonment of Christian morality and the values of modesty, chastity, and propriety destructive for many reasons, among which are, number one, the living God has designed creation. To place oneself in opposition to this design is to mock God, who says he will not be mocked. Number two, biology and procreation are testimonies to the fact that God has designed for adult sexuality to be the means of preserving and propagating the human race. Number three, scientific psychological large-scale studies universally show that early exposure to adult sexuality to children is harmful. Long-standing cultural opprobrium does not derive from hatred. Rather, it is the natural conscience as given by God which acts as an inhibitor to harmful behaviors. Number four, religious traditions universally reflect an innate acknowledgement of binary sexuality and institutionally sanctioned marriage between one man and one woman to be the healthiest framework for human thriving. Not coincidentally, this is the biblical and Christian worldview. This is logically and necessarily an exclusionary view. Number five, where accepted and celebrated, aberrant sexuality has and will always result in cultural chaos and degeneracy. Once deviance is accepted as normal behavior, there remains no philosophical or logical means of prohibiting any sexual behavior, including pedophilia. Earlier and earlier sexualization is the natural fruit of this agenda. This is not to accuse all LGBTQ people of wanting to sexualize children and youth. In fact, many of them oppose that. But the sexual libertarianism, which is the principal basis for their behaviors, cannot logically be denied to those who have sexual feelings for minors. You have heard emphatically from many citizens who oppose these. We urge you to fulfill your duty as the people's representatives by rejecting the public exhibition of this behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, we have Ken Miller. You're up, and then you'll be followed by Sherry Moffitt. Good evening.
Mayor, Council, I'm Ken Miller, pastor at Beaver Creek Baptist Church for 31 years here, and I oppose this event. All societies, almost throughout human history, have had restrictions on sexual exposure to minors. This event is a sexual event by its definition. How can the council host such an event? I'm opposed, and I pray that you guys will revoke whatever authorizations or permits for this upcoming drag event. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Sherry Moffitt, you're up next, and you're followed by Vicki Jo Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
And council members.
My name is Sherry Moffitt. I live in Cottonwood, and I'd like to start by saying we all know that the word legislate means to make laws. I've heard it said many times in quotes, you can't legislate morality. So then, are we supposed to legislate immorality? So I thought it would be good to see what the Bible has to say about that. In 1 Timothy 1, 9 through 10, says, know this, that the laws are not made for righteous men, but are made for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly, for the unholy and profane, for them that defile themselves with mankind, and the list goes on. Therefore, that is exactly why we need to enact laws which will stop these perverted and lewd events from taking place in our community. I've also heard the opposition say, if you don't like our drag queen shows, then stay away. That's just as ridiculous as saying if you don't like the crime on the streets, then stay inside your home. Or if you don't like the smog in the air, then stop breathing. The drag queens have openly admitted that their goal is to change our society by conditioning children into believing that what they are doing is innocently spreading love and inclusiveness. They want us all to be tolerant of what they are doing. Their religion is tolerance. Sadly, they are tolerant of everything and anything except for Christianity. Folks, we are in a spiritual battle for the souls of our children and future generations. The Bible says in Ephesians 6:12, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. The drag queens have accused us of hating them, but I haven't heard anyone here say that. We just hate what they are trying to do to our children and to our families. If their intentions are not to pervert or confuse little children about their identity, then why are they so insistent upon bringing their agendas to Children's Reading Hour in our public libraries and in our public elementary schools? And then, why would the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir be singing songs on YouTube with lyrics which say, "We're coming for your children"? It couldn't be more obvious that they all want to drag kids into lifestyles of lewdness. As I mentioned last time, my husband and I moved to Cottonwood 37 years ago. When our 3 girls were young, Cottonwood had 2 movie theaters which offered wholesome family-style movies. There was also a roller skating rink where we went to have fun with friends and other kids and were able to celebrate their birthday parties there too. We also had a bowling alley in town. Our girls all took tap dance lessons and ballet lessons and played 7 different seasons in City League sports. They all had friends attend Vacation Bible School every summer. My prayer is that we can all as a community get back to letting children be children again by enjoying innocent and fun activities. Therefore, I implore you, Mr. Mayor and council members, please cancel this perverted event. Please stand for our children and do what you know deep down in your hearts is the right thing to do. May God get all the glory.
Thank you, Ms. Moffitt. Vicki Jo Anderson, you're up next, and you're followed by John Mitchell.
Mayor, council, wow, you really have a hard job, as I observed tonight, and I laud you for your service to our community. I, too, want to address what the impact this might have on children. I wrote a letter to the newspaper, and they have not chosen to print it. In some circles, that's called censorship in an effort to control the narrative. But my concern is what might happen here is it might run afoul of the Arizona Revised Statutes that protect children. And the first one would be Arizona Revised Statute 1-602, which is parental rights. Should any children appear there and there is any motivation of a sexual nature, whoever took that child can be held for a Class 6 felony. Also, Arizona Revised Statute 13-118 and 13-3507 makes it clear if sexual innuendos and motivation are offered in public to children, it constitutes a Class 6 felony. And how would anyone know whether that's going on or not? So my proposal is there's some way that the children could be not allowed to the event. I know drag queens have been an adult entertainment forever. but don't let it be said that we weren't able to follow the criminal code of the state of Arizona. Arizona prides itself in protecting its children. We are noted as one of the states that have some of the best laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. John Mitchell, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Michael Nacito.
Good evening. John Mitchell, Cottonwood. I wanted to read a couple scriptures if I could. I think this is in keeping with the decision you're going to make. You know, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. And he's going to judge the behavior that we have. And Proverbs 27. And this is particularly appropriate, I think, in this case. A prudent person foresees the evil and hides themselves, but a simple person passes on and he's punished for it. And that's really the crux of the situation. I know it's a tough decision you've got to make because you're dealing with people's rights, but the fact of the matter is, you know, you see all the people here. You saw last week how many, it was unprecedented how many people showed up. It was widely known. And we're only talking about a segment of society that is, and it's clearly documented, 1% to 1.5% of people are this fringe element that want to do this kind of stuff. I mean, it's so off the charts that we would even be considering it, especially around children. And so you see all these folks here, and I sent you I want to share something with you that I sent each of you. By the way, I contacted you 3 times. I want to credit the one person who responded to me. Thank you. And I think our government should be more interactive in that. When I ask questions, I'd like to have an answer. I don't want to feel like I can't trust. And the other thing is this, did any of you read the document I sent you about the homosexual manifesto? Anybody? You can't respond, I get it. All right, but I want to read one small segment out of this entire bombastic address that came from Michael Swift. It's codified into the, in 1987, it was codified into the congressional record. The family unit spawning grounds of lies, betrayals, mediocrity, hypocrisy, violence will be abolished. The family unit, which only dampens imaginations and curbs free will, must be eliminated. Perfect boys and girls will be conceived and grown in genetic laboratories. They will be bound together in communal settings under the control and instruction of homosexual savants. All churches that condemn this will be closed. Only our gods are handsome young men and women. It goes on and on. I mean, it's just deplorable. And the thing is,
Mr.
I still
Mitchell.
want, okay, I'll finish up here real quick.
Thank you.
I sent you a FOIA. I hope you respond to it because I want to know that the public is being heard relative to your decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nacito, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Scott Murray.
Good evening. I'd like to submit another 329 signatures for our petition that's been running still. People wishing to remove children out of this event. I know it's not a legal document. I know that some of the people don't live in Cottonwood, but I'm guessing that some of the people that are considering going to this event probably don't come from Cottonwood either. We shop here, we worship here, we recreate here. We spend probably half of the revenue. People that are outside the city spend about half the revenue that you take in. So I thank you that you'll consider what we have to say and the signatures. One of the things that's interesting to me, I'm going to go in a different route here. The last meeting we had, you took the, you made the decision for the call of the public to go after the developer. And a few of us looked at each other thinking maybe you were going to try to wear us out so some of us would go home. But thankfully, thank God that nobody left. 40 of us spoke. I think 3 represented the drag queen business owner, and the rest of us were speaking up against it, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm speaking up against children being considered as part of this family entertainment misnomer that it is. When you did that, though, it was interesting because all these people got to see how you deal with a developer, and he was the guy that said, you know, pound sand if you don't like my project. We don't want you to deal with a developer like that. We want you to be strong and protect our city. But what interesting is, most of the time, these people, the 200 that were here at the time, they wouldn't have sat through something like that before, but you made it happen. You educated us in Civics 101, because all politics is local. So thank you for that. Another thing you're able to do, and I'm not sure everybody on the council does this, but somebody does, is they talk to the press and make up stories, and the press, who's in their back pocket, lies to the rest of the public. It was intimated that there was a good representation of both pro and con, for and against people in the last city council meeting. There were maybe 10 people for, and there was easily 150 or more against it. So that statement was quoted verbatim by the Verde Valley Independent and by the Cottonwood Journal Extra. There's another quote that was given to that. Directly after February 7th meeting, 2 articles.
Sorry, sir.
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Mr. Murray, Scott Murray, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Ashley Kupnick.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, just wanted to preface my comments by letting you know that we're not hating of anyone. We've been praying for the council, for the mayor, the vice mayor. We've been praying for all the city officials who have taken on this problem that's facing us now. So there is no hate in this room. We are not people that hate people. We hate the sin that we see that they're trying to promote. So I just wanted to preface it by that. And I don't know what your belief in God is, but I'll quote Psalm 14:1 that says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupted. They do abominable deeds, and there is no one who does good." And that's an example of an unregenerate heart. So I'm going to read from the book of Romans. It's a letter that Paul wrote to the Romans, and the Romans, we know, were one of the greatest cultures and had the largest land mass holding of people's lives in the world since creation. So I'm going to read this letter to the Romans. They were facing the same problem we're facing tonight. "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power, and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse." So we are without excuse if we make bad decisions. "For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give him thanks, but they became futile in their speculations and foolish in their heart, and their heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man and birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. Therefore God gave them over to the lusts of their hearts, to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for which is unnatural. And in the same way, men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts, receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind, to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, envy, full of envy, murder, strife. So this is what we're facing as a culture. And I implore you to remove the children from this event, because it's ungodly, and each one of us is going to stand before a holy God, and he will judge you. He will judge each one of us for everything we say, everything we think, and everything we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Ashley Kopnick, you're up next, and you're followed by Vincent Young.
All right, good evening, Mayor and council members. Each and every one of you who sits here today, you are an elected official. And let me remind you that this is not a job that you stumbled upon. You were elected by the people to serve the people. And it is evident from the last meeting that the majority is in the opposition. Your elected position is to listen to the majority, and we have spoken. This has nothing to do with being transphobic, homophobic, or any of those other terms that are so loosely tossed around in order to intimidate people like myself and label us as something that we are not. This has everything to do, however, with protecting our children, the most vulnerable. Let me make it clear that I would be up here in front of you if it was preaching the same thing if this was a group of straight males or females that were trying to put on a show like this. This event is clearly meant for a 21 and older crowd. Now, before the meeting, I gave to the clerk 4 pictures. If we could look at that, if that's okay, Mayor. The first picture, these are from the Pride Tour that was in Lake Havasu, the same one that's coming here. The first picture is a gentleman doing a spread eagle on stage. The second picture, if you'd like to look, is 3 drag queens. You can kind of see their attire there, not covering very much, if I do say so myself. You can also see the singles that are in their hands. If we turn to the third page, down in the bottom is a young girl holding dollar bills in her hands. Now, if you flip to the fourth page, that is a picture of a strip club. Women wearing the same attire, singles being thrown at them. The only difference is one allowed children, one do not. I'm not saying that we can't have the drag show. There's been many of them at a local establishment here. And quite frankly, I know that this item was never meant to make the agenda. It was pushed through Parks and Rec, and they are the one who signed it, so it was never going to be on this agenda for you to talk with the public about, and I'm very disappointed in that. I would demand that one of you council members stand up and ask for it to be put on the agenda so that we may speak about it, because I know you know in your hearts that it is wrong, especially if you have children or grandchildren. I'm sure probably most of you wouldn't take your kids there. Also, I would urge you to, if you can, I don't know if you can, but to put a stipulation on them. Come here, but make it 21 and older. There will be no children at this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Vincent Young, you're up next, and you'll be followed by Richard Rundling. Okay.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to voice any concerns, my concerns about the show you all approved. I oppose this show completely. So the last meeting, the folks putting on this show threatened you. Yes, he did. He threatened you with the ACLU. Just so you know, his XY chromosome makes him a man, and I don't pretend otherwise. There are zoning laws. Regulation of sexually orientated businesses, better known as SOB. What is the required distance allowable to any sexually orientated business nearby schools, youth centers, churches, or other businesses? Zoning laws regulate where a given business may or may not locate. This is a business as a traveling SOB show. Usually these shows have age requirements. This doesn't. There are nudity rules. There's contact with patrons that are also part of these rules. There's licensing. And I heard someone here mention about Texas. Texas has a collection fine of money collected at the door for these shows to help rape victims. In closing, I ask the what if question. What if this is found to be an illegal show? What if? And for any reason, a child was harmed, and you guys all allowed it. Will you spend tax dollars to defend yourselves? We're asking you, spend the tax dollars, fight this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Richard Ruling, and I don't think I'm getting your last name right, I apologize. You'll be followed by Randy Burdette. Good evening.
You got the name right. Ruling. I'm a physician, 80 years old, seen a lot of life. Like to share a most amazing text in the Bible for me. Trump's was given the honor of being on a coin in Israel, Cyrus II, but he fails yet at Cyrus I. Cyrus I was in Isaiah 45, verse 1. Amazing text. God named Cyrus 100 years before he was born and told how he would conquer Babylon when 2 river gates were left open. Cyrus didn't know anything about the Bible, but he did divert the Euphrates River into a reservoir and marched under the wall of Babylon and discovered 2 river gates left open. Conquered Babylon with no loss of life. But when Daniel showed him his name in ancient writings taken from Jerusalem 70 years earlier, Cyrus was impressed that God knew him. And in 5 verses before that, God says, I formed you in the womb. This is God, and he knows us. And by the way, the most outspoken person, atheist of last century, Anthony Flew, PhD for most of his life, but when he learned how amazingly complex the DNA molecule is, no way could it happen by chance in evolution. He became a believer in God. And I don't care what they think, but XY is written on every cell of our body. You can cut off organs or you can give hormones, but it won't do the job, and there's lots of people wishing they hadn't done that. And I'm just saying, this country is, you know, the Bible says judgment begins at the house of God. There are thinking men and women today who see something great and decisive about to happen. They don't know what it is, but we're on the verge of a great, stupendous crisis, really. And in the Bible, crisis is spelled with a K in Greek for judgment. That's how it's treated. I mean, that's how it's translated, judgment. Judgment is coming. And it might not just be us before God, it's the whole nation with war, famine, pestilence, the 3 horses in Revelation. So, hey, we don't have a lot of time, and I need to say that civilizations, many cultures have homosexuality, but God judged Sodom because they paraded it. The word is declare in the King James, but if you look at the meanings of the words, they paraded. And this is what pride and parade, we do it. And we're going to get judged like Sodom in a sense. Maybe not fire and brimstone, but we're going to get judgment. And I just think we need to, where are our roots? This country was formed by men coming from the old world who wanted freedom, but they would never be doing what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Randy Burdette, you're up next, followed by Bree.
Thank you to the City Council for allowing us to speak on events that the community finds important. Despite what some may claim, most people don't mind drag shows as long as they don't include children. which is one of the biggest reasons why the scheduled all-ages drag show has gotten many people's attention. I also don't mind drag shows as long as they don't include children in the audience as well. Some have also claimed that not allowing children in drag shows would increase suicide for teens and kids that are considered to have alternative sexual orientations. I don't understand how this is relevant to the main point, which is drag is adult entertainment and shouldn't involve minors. Since I've already given my points at the last council meeting I attended on the All Ages Drag Show coming up for April 8th, I'll reiterate my main points. Drag shows since at least 1932, as late as the 2000s, have been attached to alternative sexual preferences and still are. There is no separating drag from that. Drag shows have also always been adult entertainment with adult dances. In a recent drag show for all ages in Lake Havasu, one of the main event organizers, Christopher Hall, for the same tour was on video doing dances like the spread eagle that is based on the sex position in the presence of children as young as 6, which leads one to believe it won't be any different here. There will also be alcohol served at this event with tipping of the performers, not much different than other adult entertainment events like strip shows. Children in these events often are the ones doing the tipping. So as anyone can see that is paying attention, this is definitely not an all ages show. Having said all of this, I implore the City Council to at the very least put this on the agenda and place an age restriction of 18 or 21 plus on this event. As for adult entertainment events in general being permitted to occur at the taxpayer-funded clubhouse in Old Town, that should be hashed out by the City Council and the Cottonwood community, since that will open the doors to having to allow adult events in a building that has always been historically traditional and family-friendly. Again, I hope the City Council can do the right thing and at the least place age restrictions on the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Bree is not wanting to speak, but she's in opposition, and we'll move on to Josh Humphrey. And Josh Humphrey, you'll be followed by John Reborg.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Obviously, this is very difficult, so thank you for listening to our concerns. It is a sad day when perverted desires, promiscuous intentions, and sexual fetishes are placed above the safety of our children, the wholesomeness of our community, and the standard of the moral law. It's even more troubling when the actions and desires of real biological men parading in whorish attire looking to be emulated and celebrated by even the youngest among us are considered basic rights. When did freedom become bowing before a sexual agenda with the clear aim of distorting the biblical, biological, rational, and historical view of male and female? If a private group wished to hold an event celebrating racial superiority, something I oppose, of course, I'm against it, would you condone or support that? My guess is that you wouldn't. In what other areas of life would we ever expose or let our impressionable children make adult decisions? It would be our worst nightmare if we let our children choose their preferred diet because we thought they knew what they wanted. Most children would end up with severe deficiencies and health issues. Children need protection. They don't yet have the wisdom to govern themselves, so we are in charge of leading and guiding them in order to teach them wisdom. Even if you permit this event to continue in our town, what is keeping you from raising the admission requirements? Make this adult only, no children. What's holding you back? Fear that you will be demonized by dolled up, twerking men. You might say, well, we're just going to let them do it as long as it doesn't affect us. But it never stops there. What becomes tolerated will become accepted. What becomes accepted will become celebrated and then mandated. Not just these men, but whatever intentions and desires that go along with this initial theme. Sexualization is and will be placed on our children at such events. We don't let them drive till they're 16. They graduate at 18 high school, and they can't drink or smoke now till 21. Let kids be kids. Don't let their minds be violated. Let's protect our children from alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, strippers, porn, drag events, and insecurity. Everything unfit for them, let us protect them from sin. The solution to this problem, which you can't solve, is the gospel. It always is. Repentance from dead works from sin, and that includes too Mr. Christopher Hall, who should repent of his sin. There is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. That is Christ. That is the gospel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, that was Josh Humphrey, right? Yeah, okay. So just to let everyone know that you can't go out that way, you have to go out that way. So when the call to the public is ended, please go out that direction. Those doors are closed. Next and last is John Reborg.
Good evening. I'd like to come to you from a different perspective in that I was hired by the city of Cottonwood and Sedona from the Parks and Recs as an umpire. And part of my duties was not just to only umpire the game, but to also umpire the moral code that was going on in and around the parks. And there were times when I had to call the police because of lewd behavior, because it did not fit as one of the council members, I can't read the name from here, said, it did not portray our city values. And it did not matter if there was an accompanying parent there or not. You just didn't do certain things because it did not reflect the image that I, as an umpire and a representative of the city, would want to come across as being that this is okay behavior. So there were many times I had to invite people to leave the event. You know, I ejected them from and I know I think I've umpired several of you folks in the city leagues, and you've seen me do this. It was not comfortable to do, but as a matter of principle and pride of who we are as a city and who we are as we represent the city was more important than someone's right to do what they think they were allowed to do. So please take this into account, because I know as an umpire, if you give an inch, they're going to take a mile. Okay? And it's not going to stop at this one place. You may find it also appearing here at the rec center or at the swimming pools. You know, and as an official or as a representative, you're putting us in a position of, well, if you allowed us to do it, if you allowed us that to happen here, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do as a representative of the city? And honestly, if this is the direction of the Parks and Rec, I'm glad I stepped out of it when I did, because this is not the image of a caring community that wants to protect the vulnerable in our community. So I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right, I will motion to pay the claims and adjustments.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and I'll motion to adjourn. Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Crotts seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.